Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our November the 8th, 2021 regular meeting of Belleville City Council. For those watching on the city streaming service or our YouTube channel or on your TV, I would point out that our agenda and all the reports for today's meeting are on the city website at www.belleville.ca under the agenda, minutes, and live meeting video on the left side of the screen. If you click on the November 8th calendar, it will bring you to today's agenda. There is a hyperlink in that agenda in the event you wish to look at the report so you can follow along. I will now call the meeting to order and state that all members of council are present. I'll ask the Director of Corporate Services and City Clerk, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber of minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others, so that we serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Before I ask everyone to sit down, I just want to take a moment to remember that 1 year ago today, actually, former councillor Patricia Culhane passed away after a very short illness. Her sudden death was a shock to us all, the community, and her family. 1 year later, her presence is still felt around this table. On October 29th, we had the great privilege of dedicating a new park in the city of Belleville in her honor. We will hold a moment of silence in respect for Patricia Culhane and her contributions to the city of Belleville, both past, present, and in the future. Thank you. You may be seated. All right. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Councillors, anyone have a potential interest? Councillor McCaw.
Thank you. 8B2, and I think there's a few bylaws as well that relate to that. 2021-177, 2021-178.
Sorry, so this is the Ben Bleecker property?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So 8B2, and then which bylaws again?
I do believe, I just quickly glanced, it looks like 2021-177 and 2021-178, and I hope I didn't miss anything. I think those are the only two.
Okay. If we do, we'll catch them for you. So just fill out your form, please, and give it to the city clerk. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to public meetings, and today we do have a public meeting. The public meeting is dealing with the Development Charges Act 1997, and I will receive deputations in connection with the proposed bylaw. A public meeting has been advertised pursuant to Section 12 of the Development Charges Act 1997. The Section 12 states that before passing a development charge bylaw, the council shall A, hold at least one public meeting, B, give at least 20 days notice of the meeting or meetings in accordance with regulations, and C, ensure that the proposed bylaw and the background study are made available to the public at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting, or if there is more than one meeting prior to the first meeting. In terms of making representations, any person who attends a meeting under this section may make representations relating to the proposed bylaw, and the council determination on this matter is final. So what I will do is I will invite people to come to the podium. You have approximately 10 minutes to make a presentation, although we want you to be able to effectively make your presentation, so that's a loose standard. I'd like you to start off by stating your name, and then if you're representing yourself or an organization. Sir, welcome. If you just want to push the button, turn the red light on, go ahead.
Thank you. And am I okay to unmask? Thank you. So good afternoon. I'm Peter Subsisco with Watson & Associates. We are the firm that has prepared the city's development charges background study, and I will be leading the initial presentation here, presenting the background study itself. So as mentioned, and I believe the presentation should be up now. Is that correct? There we go. Thank you. So this is a statutory meeting required under the Development Charges Act, and municipalities are required to hold a public meeting prior to consideration in new development charges bylaw. A related requirement to the public meeting is for a development charges background study to be published on the municipal website at least 60 days prior to council considering the passage of a new development charges bylaw. And so those legislative requirements have been met. The development charges background study was published on October 6th in order to meet those legislative requirements. So this presentation itself will provide a review of the proposed development charges, and subsequently council will receive any public input on the matter. So firstly, the development charges are a discretionary tool that's available to municipalities to help recover the capital costs related with residential and non-residential growth within a municipality. Municipalities are empowered to impose development charges via the Development Charges Act. The city does currently have a development charges bylaw, and it imposes those charges under bylaw 2021-18. That development charge bylaw came into effect earlier this year on January 25th. Generally speaking, development charge bylaws have a life of 5 years. That's mandated under the legislation. They have to be updated at least every 5 years. However, the existing development charge bylaw was approved as an interim development charges bylaw with a 1-year expiry of that bylaw, meaning that existing bylaw is going to expire on January 25th of next year. So the purpose of the interim development charges bylaw was to allow the city to undertake some further consultations with the stakeholders, as well as to provide an opportunity to incorporate the findings of 2 important background documents which inform the capital works, the capital projects that are included in the development charge study, that being the infrastructure phasing strategy background report, as well as the Parks and Recreation master plan. In terms of the overall study process, following the approval and adoption of the existing development charge bylaw in January, we undertook a number of stakeholder consultation sessions over the course of February through May of this year. Then from June to September, there was the finalization and refinement of the infrastructure phasing strategy, as well as the Parks and Recreation master plan. And somewhat overlapping with that through August and into September, we updated the growth forecast, which is an important part of the development charges study, as well as updated the development charge calculations and incorporated those projects coming out of those 2 important documents that I mentioned. We then undertook another stakeholder consultation session to present the draft findings of the development charges study on September 23rd of this year. That was then followed by the release of the background study itself on October 6th. We are undertaking the public meeting as required by the legislation today, and then following this step, there will be the approval, or council will consider approval of the new development charges bylaw sometime in December. Based on the existing schedule, we're anticipating that to be potentially on December 13th. So this illustration on the next slide here summarizes the methodology that must be followed in establishing development charges. And this methodology is fairly well defined within the Development Charges Act, which is quite prescriptive in terms of the steps that have to be taken to calculate a development charge. So that methodology commences with what's illustrated with the green rectangle at the very top is an estimate of the amount of growth that's expected within a municipality over a certain time horizon. Having established the growth forecast, we then also have to establish the anticipated increase in the need for service that will result from that growth. And we have to do that on a service-by-service basis. So for example, that could entail looking at the amount of additional treatment capacity that would be required in order to allow future growth to occur within the municipality, or to what extent pipes would need to be extended, roads widened, and so on. From that general identification of needs, we're getting into a consideration of specific projects to be included in the calculation of the development charge. And relative to those capital needs and those capital projects, we have to observe a number of deductions. So firstly, we have to measure that future need for servicing relative to the historical level of service that has been provided in a municipality over the preceding 10 years. And that historical level of service measurement provides somewhat of a cap. as to how much capital can be included in the charge moving forward. And that's to ensure that we're not asking future growth to pay for an increase in the level of service. Development charges are just intended to help a municipality maintain the same level of service that's been provided over the past 10 years. A couple of the other important deductions that we have to observe are we have to identify the benefit to existing, so that portion of any of these capital projects that would serve to benefit the existing population, and then as well if there's any grants or subsidies that are expected for any of those capital projects, we have to recognize those as well. One thing I would like to highlight with respect to the capital needs that have been included in the development charges study this time around, the vast majority of them have been included in prior development charges studies that the city has had. However, they have been further refined and augmented through the inclusion of the capital included in the infrastructure phasing strategy, as well as the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Again, being a couple of reasons why that interim development charges bylaw was passed in the first place. So in addition to the capital costs, we also have the ability to include financing costs, so being interest that's being paid on any outstanding debentures for previously completed projects. And then those total net capital costs, including any financing costs, are allocated between residential and non-residential development and then divided by that amount of growth to come up with a charge per unit on the residential side and a charge per square foot on the non-residential side. And then there are also at the very bottom of the illustration that there are a number of implementation policy considerations as well, which we will touch on later on in the presentation. So then in terms of the growth forecast underlying the development charges study was prepared consistent with the Municipal Comprehensive Review, which I believe was completed in 2018, on which the official plan update is based. And the city, on that basis, expecting a growth of 2,481 additional people over the next 10 years, so to 2032 within the city. And that amount of population growth is expected to be accommodated in approximately 1,824 additional dwelling units. And then in addition to that residential growth, we've also identified and employment growth to 2032 of approximately 1,634 additional employees, and expecting that amount of employment growth would result in an additional 1.5 million square feet of gross floor area of building space to accommodate that amount of growth. The growth forecast within the development charges study also does look out to 2041 being a longer-term growth horizon. And this is considered when looking at the capital needs for the harder services such as roads, fire, police, as well as water and wastewater. And then in addition to that, as you see at the very bottom of this table, we are also looking at the amount of growth expected within the urban serviced area, and that population and employment increment being specifically relevant for the water and wastewater service rates, which are only imposed in the serviced areas of the city. What I would like to highlight here as well is that the growth forecast in front of you and underlying the development charges study is very similar to what was presented in the 2020 development charges study. It has just been adjusted to reflect the amount of growth that has occurred over the course of this year. So we've moved that forecast horizon forward by a year. The services that are included in the development charges background study are consistent with what was included in the previous development charges background study. And as summarized on this slide, for some of the services, the growth and the capital needs related to that growth have been looked at over a 10-year forecast horizon, as you see summarized on the left-hand side of the slide. And then we have a number of services such as the roads, the fire, and the police, as well as water and wastewater, which have been looked at over a longer time frame. On the next slide here, we see a pie chart summarizing the total capital needs that have been identified within the development charges study. The total capital cost related to those projects totaling just under $600 million. A number of deductions from that $600 million have been observed. A few that I will highlight here is we have the deduction for existing reserve funds of approximately $15.25 million. That reflects development charges that have been collected from previous development and not yet spent or put towards specific capital projects. So we are identifying that and applying it against the projects that have been identified in this study. The other important deduction is the benefit to existing deduction, which is the big teal portion of the pie, which represents about $211 million, which is again reflective of that benefit to existing share of the capital projects that have been identified. And then the other very significant share of the deductions is the yellow portion on the top right, which is reflective of the post-period benefit, and that deduction totaling about $206 million from the capital needs. And what the post-period benefit deduction is reflective of is that the planning studies underlying some of the services, such as transportation or even the water, wastewater through the infrastructure phasing strategy, looked at a longer forecast horizon than what is included in the development charges study. For example, the infrastructure phasing strategy looked at a full build-out of the urban boundary for the city and the servicing needs associated with that full build-out. So given that within the development charges study, we only have a subset of that growth included in the growth forecast, we have to make an appropriate deduction to make sure that we're not asking the growth over the next 20 years to pay for all of those capital needs. Similar deduction applies to the transportation or roads and related service, where the 2014 Transportation Master Plan looked at a greater growth increment than what's included in the development charges study. So those deductions have been made accordingly. So then on the next slide here, slide 10, we see that the total capital costs that have been included in the calculation of the development charge total $83.44 million. And of that $83 million, about 39% of that is related to roads, another 35% is related to wastewater, and another 9% is related to water services. So in total, those hard services correspond to about, or represent about 82% of the total DC eligible costs included in the charge. And it's very common to see that development charges really are used mainly to fund those hard service needs as identified. What I also would like to highlight is that the vast majority of the growth-related costs included in the charge as they pertain to roads and related water and wastewater have been captured within the respective background reports, such as the infrastructure phasing strategy, where about 84% of the water projects and about 86% of the wastewater projects originate from that study, which really was a consolidation of various background reports that the city has prepared over the years to understand the servicing needs of the different areas. And then similarly for roads and related, about 81% of the capital costs originate from the 2014 Transportation Master Plan. So again, making sure that the capital needs that are included in the charge and in the background study are based on these background reports that the city has prepared. The other significant component here is the Parks and Recreation component, which represents about 12% of the DC eligible costs. And that component is mainly related, or the costs related within that component are mainly related to the repayment of debt that was previously incurred related to the multiplex facility. That represents about 42% of the cost within Parks and Recreation services. Another big chunk of that is the off-road cycling and multipurpose trails that have been identified through the 2014 Transportation Master Plan. And then there has also been an additional piece included this time around related to the expansion of various outdoor facilities that would be required to maintain that level of service in light of future growth as identified in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So those projects coming out of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan comprise about 44% of the growth-related costs included in the calculation of the charge. So having looked at the growth forecast and the capital costs related to that amount of growth, the schedule on slide 11 here shows the full schedule of calculated development charges for different types of residential units. And the total development charges applicable to a new single or semi-detached dwelling within the urban serviced area would be $24,299, as shown in the second column all the way at the bottom of the table. And then the charges for other types of residential units are based on the average occupancy levels of those types of units in terms of persons per unit. So for example, because an apartment unit tends to on average have fewer occupants than a single detached home, the charges applicable to an apartment unit are correspondingly lower. So that's the differentiating factor in terms of the charges for different types of units. And then on the very far right-hand side of the table, you will also see the development charges that would be applicable to non-residential development on a per square foot of gross floor area basis for those types of developments. So perhaps more informative than the full schedule of calculated charges, on slide 13 here, we are comparing the charges that are currently in effect to the charges that have been calculated, and we're doing that for two different types of development. Firstly, the comparison within the middle three columns of the table is provided for a single detached dwelling. And then on the far right-hand side of the table, the last three columns show that comparison for per square foot of non-residential development. So the increase in the charge as calculated applicable to a single detached dwelling within the urban serviced areas would be an increase of about $9,979 per unit. And that increase is actually lower than what was proposed as part of the 2020 development charges background study. And you will see that the amount that was calculated at that time is shown in the first set of columns for each comparison. So at that time, we were calculating that charge to be just over $27,000 per unit. So in terms of the changes that have resulted in that charge currently being somewhat lower, even though the capital program is generally the same, we have seen a reduction in the service areas that are limited by the historical service level cap. So within fire, within police, and even within the roads and related component, we have seen a decrease in how much can be included relative to that historical service level cap. And then as a result of the major consolidation of the various water and wastewater projects, there have been also some shifts in the cost allocations for those projects as well. And then the other influencing factor here is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, where within that component of the charge, you will see that the calculated rate is $6,162 per unit relative to a current charge of $3,424. So again, that's largely related to the inclusion of the costs related to expanding outdoor facilities in line with the recommendations of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Looking at the comparison for non-residential development, the increase per unit of gross floor area for that type of development is $14.35 per square foot. And the main driving factor behind that increase on the non-residential side of the charge are the projects coming out of the infrastructure phasing strategy, where again the Parks and Recreation component influences the non-residential charge to a lesser extent because the vast majority of those costs are recovered from residential development. And what we have seen within that component of the charge is that the way that the residential and non-residential allocation of cost is made for water and wastewater between residential and non-residential development is based on the assumed water demands and wastewater flows expected to be generated by that future development. And so as part of this development charges background study, we updated those assumptions to be aligned with the infrastructure phasing strategy, which did shift more of those water and wastewater costs over to the non-residential side. And that has resulted in an increase to that component of the charge. And while that is a fairly significant increase, it is a better reflection of how infrastructure planning and design is carried out with respect to residential versus non-residential development. So then in terms of some comparators here, what we have done is, as we've done in previous years and updates, is provided a comparison of the city's current development charges relative to other area municipalities, and you will see that the current charge, as indicated with the gray arrow on the right-hand side of the slide, of about $14,320 per unit, which is again within the urban serviced areas, is generally in line with the charges that are in place in Brighton, for example, as well as Crammy. And with the increase of $9,979 per unit based on the calculated rates, that will put the city over towards the left-hand side of the graph here, and with those development charges being more in line with the city of Kingston, as well as the municipalities of Trent Hills and Port Hope. And just something that isn't shown on this slide, but for a little bit of additional context, the median development charges, when we look at more of a province-wide comparison from a BMA study that looks at annually these comparisons for about 100 plus municipalities across the province, the median development charges for a single detached dwelling for 2020 were just under $38,000. So that's, again, more province-wide, with the average being just over $30,000 per unit. Now, the comparison of development charges alone, I don't think paints a full picture. One of the points that's commonly raised is whether development charges negatively impact housing affordability. So in order to look at that from another angle, the graph on slide 15 shows the average sale prices of newly constructed single detached homes from 2020 and 2021, and then shows what percentage of that total selling price of new homes is the development charge. And what it also shows is how much higher the sale price of a newly constructed single detached home in Belleville would be if the city was to increase the development charge to the fully calculated amount. So you see that calculated, or you see that illustrated with the left of the two arrows there, assuming that the entire increase in the development charge would be passed on to the buyer of a new home. So the selling price of a new home, based on this analysis, would increase by about 2%. So that's that $9,979 per unit increase, but would generally maintain the city's competitive position relative to that group of municipalities that have seen very similar prices of newly constructed homes in 2020 and 2021. So that would include municipalities like Centre Hastings, Quinte West, and Greater Napanee. So generally still in line within that group of municipalities. One other thing I would like to highlight here is, if you'll notice, the municipality of Brighton, for example, where development charges are currently about $300 higher than in the city of Belleville when we look at the total development charges payable. However, the average selling price of a newly constructed home was about $88,000, or 18% higher relative to the city of Belleville. So indicative of perhaps some other more market-driven forces that influence the sale prices of new homes beyond just development charges. So then we have a similar comparison on slide 16, looking at what the development charges payable would be per square meter of gross floor area for a hypothetical commercial development. The current charge is approximately $61 per square meter, which is again indicated with the gray arrow, which is on the right-hand side of the slide, and that's comparable to the charges that would apply to this type of development in Loyalist, for example, Quinte West, Sterling, Rawdon as well. And then with the calculated charges of about $20 per square foot, or $216 per square meter, which do represent a significant increase, those charges would be somewhat higher than they are for commercial developments within the city of Kingston. And again, just for some additional context here, looking at a more province-wide comparison of development charges, so based on that same 2020 BMA report, the development charges, the median development charges that would apply to commercial developments across those municipalities surveyed were $134 per square meter. So that's the median, with the average applicable to commercial developments being $208 per square meter. So again, with the calculated charge for the city of Belleville being roughly aligned with that more province-wide average for commercial development. So one final comparison here for a hypothetical industrial development, again showing the charges on a per square meter of gross floor area basis. The city's policy historically has been to exempt industrial development from the payment of development charges. That is something that's commonly witnessed in municipalities across the province. So what we're showing on the slide here is just where that charge would be, where the city to impose the full charge as calculated. However, the proposed policy is to maintain that exemption for industrial development. So then in the final section of the presentation, I'll just go through a few of the key development charge policies. Firstly, it's recommended that the city continue to impose development charges on a citywide basis, with the exception of water and wastewater services, which would only be imposed in the serviced areas, as is the practice currently, and also that the city continues to use the area-specific charges within the Stanley Park area, as has been the case historically. In terms of the timing of collection and payment of development charges, the new development charge bylaw will continue to provide for calculation and collection of development charges at the building permit stage. However, as a result of some of the recent legislative amendments to the Development Charges Act, there have been some changes to that which are statutorily imposed. So for rental housing and for institutional developments, those types of developments are going to pay DCs over 6 equal annual payments. And then similarly for not-for-profit housing, those types of developments are going to pay development charges in 21 equal annual installments. And then in terms of the timing of calculation of the charge, so again, currently development charges are calculated based on the rates that are in effect at the time of the building permit. So what has changed with the amendments to the Development Charges Act is that any development that's proceeding through either a site plan or a zoning bylaw amendment application, when they ultimately come forward for a building permit, their development charges are calculated based on the rates that were in effect at the time they came forward for the planning application. So there's a delay in terms of, they effectively have their development charges frozen in time with the planning application. Within the development charges bylaw, there is a provision that allows the city to charge interest both on the installment payments as well as on that DC rate freeze. So from the time the DCs are calculated to the time they ultimately become payable, and the applicable interest rate is the Bank of Canada prime lending rate. And again, these are policies that are contained within the existing bylaw as well and are just being maintained for the proposed bylaw as well. Under the Development Charges Act, there are a number of exemptions that have to be observed by all municipalities across the province. These pertain to the expansion of industrial buildings up to 50% of the gross floor area. Those are statutorily exempt. There are various exemptions for residential intensification, so adding secondary units within existing homes or adding a secondary or accessory apartment above a detached garage. Those types of accessory units are exempt from the payment of development charges, subject to some restrictions. As well as upper and lower tier governments and school boards, those entities are generally exempt, as well as universities that receive regular funding from the government. In addition to the statutory development charge exemptions, municipalities can also include additional exemptions within the development charges bylaw, as has been the case for the city of Belleville. As I mentioned earlier, there is the current practice, as has been the practice historically, is to provide a full exemption for industrial development, and that's proposed to be maintained, as well as the current exemptions for private schools, places of worship, hospitals, non-residential farm buildings, as well as development creating accessory uses not exceeding 10 square meters of floor area, and then as well development of any land owned by a college and used for teaching related purposes is exempt under the city's policies as well. So those are all proposed to be maintained. And then one more slide here on the non-statutory DC exemptions. So as has been the practice historically, non-residential development within the Belleville downtown improvement area is fully exempt from the payment of development charges. There's also a 50% reduction in the DCs payable for residential development within the central business district, and also a 50% reduction for affordable rental apartment units outside of that central business district as well. So one final note here around the DC bylaw policies. Redevelopment credits are a provision that's commonly witnessed in development charge bylaws. So this is where an existing property is being redeveloped, or someone demolishes an existing dwelling, for example, and goes on to build 2 new dwellings on that same lot. You would recognize a credit for the one dwelling that previously existed. So it's just recognizing that there was some pre-existing servicing capacity related to what previously existed on the site. There is a time limit on that, so someone has 5 years from the date of the demolition of the existing dwelling or whatever building was on the property currently to come forward for a building permit for that credit to be recognized. And then last but not least, with respect to indexing, so the charges and all of the calculations contained within the development charges background study are denominated in 2021 dollars. And so recognizing those inflationary pressures, the Development Charges Act does allow municipalities to adjust those charges. The practice for the city of Belleville historically has been to adjust those charges on January 1st of each year in accordance with the prescribed index under the Act, and that's the non-residential construction price index, and that policy is proposed to be maintained as well. So again, to help those development charge rates keep pace with inflation in between the formal updates of the background study, which is generally done every 5 years. So in terms of next steps, Council will receive input from the public on the development charge proposal. We will then need to consider whether any amendments to the development charges background study and the draft development charge bylaw are required as a result of any input received. Council, if there is an amendment required, Council will then need to determine whether a subsequent public meeting is required on the matter. And then finally, as mentioned in the introduction, Council is going to consider the approval of the development charge background study as well as a new development charge bylaw sometime in December. Again, based on the schedule of Council meetings, I think we were expecting that to be December 13th, but I do understand that there are some other Council meetings in December as well where that could be considered. So that wraps up the formal presentation, and happy to answer any questions there may be.
Great, thank you very much. And yeah, just to clarify, I anticipate that we will deal with the development charge issue on December the 6th during the capital budget deliberations. Okay, so the document that you referred through is a public document and it's posted on the city's website. People can go there for more information. Thank you very much for your presentation today. Appreciate your work for the City of Belleville. Thank you. All right, I will ask if there are any other individuals who wish to speak to this matter. If they want to come forward, state their name, and if they're representing themselves or the organization. Mr. Kempener. If you just push the button, it turns the red light on. You're good to go, yeah.
Okay. Yes, my name is Peter Kempener. I've been involved in primarily non-residential construction and development in the city for about 40 years now, and I'm a past president of the Quinte Construction Association, and also current president of the Belleville Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business here in the city. I'm speaking here this evening to the non-residential development charges increases. So we wish to communicate our concerns regarding the recent report that was presented by the city's consultant regarding the development charges, the one that we've just now heard. The report is suggesting an increase in non-residential development charges from $5.69 to, I had $19.98, but I just see on the screen here it's actually over $20 now, $20.04 I think it was. So by comparison, our neighbors to the west, Quinte West, are at $4.38 per square foot. Our neighbors to the east at Napanee are $2.29 per square foot, and other area municipalities are similar range as well. Even Kingston, which has the luxury of largely public sector economy, are only at $8.72 per square foot. And we don't have that luxury here. Our employers and business owners need to maintain a manageable and competitive cost base for everything they do. Cornwall, which has a similar demographic to Belleville, is at $3.06 per square foot. Again, the report is suggesting Belleville increase to over 20. Obviously, a more than 350% increase or even a 100% increase will not go unnoticed and has major consequences, as it will definitely affect people's decision-making to invest in this community. Those kinds of increases are entirely unfair and unmanageable to those people who have already made the decision to invest in this community. It is one thing to turn investment away, which would most definitely happen, but something else altogether to impose these kinds of increases on someone who has already invested in this community in good faith that the decision makers in this city would not threaten their investment by imposing completely unmanageable increases. People need to know that they can trust their city and their elected officials. I think they can. I was surprised to hear that the study did not even consult with our own manager of economic development. If you're not consulting with the people who are working on the front lines to bring business and economic development to this city, then it really puts into question whether the city is serious about economic development. Any increase needs to be done in a phased approach to allow people a reasonable opportunity to make decisions and manage the impact of these increases. That will also give the city an opportunity to gauge the effects of these proposed increases and be able to walk them back or delay if necessary, and find other ways of funding infrastructure. I have seen firsthand how increases or charges such as this has completely blindsided developers, and other charges has steered people to look for more favorable places to invest. We're finally, after many years of stagnant growth, seeing our community move forward. And increasingly, people are sitting up and taking notice that this is a great place in which to live and invest. Existing property owners and taxpayers are realizing the benefits of this growth as well. It would be a disservice to our community and a big step backward if we were to impose charges that would stall the momentum and growth we are seeing. We are all in this together, and it is important that we all work together in an environment of mutual trust, respect, and understanding. The kinds of surprises that are being proposed with a 350% increase to non-residential development charges and an almost doubling of residential development charges will not benefit anyone and will severely impact the trust and confidence people have in this community. I would ask Council to carefully consider this matter and ensure that any increase is done in a phased approach that is manageable and does not compromise the progress we are making as a community. Thank you for your time and consideration. We all want the same thing, really, in the end, and that is to maintain a healthy, thriving, and affordable community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campanar. Is there anyone else that would like to make a presentation? Mr. Van Heusen, welcome.
Is it still on? Hi. Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for this opportunity to speak to you all about this important issue. Make sure I can figure out this out. Just a little about us. I'm John Van Heusen. I'm the current president of the Quinte Home Builders Association. My brother and I have a small construction firm in town called Van Heusen Homes, and we're proud to build homes within the city of Belleville and the entire Bay of Quinte region. A little bit about our industry, because we feel as home builders and developers, we often get looked at as one person here or a developer there, but really we are an industry and we have a significant impact and role to play. In the Quinte region right now, we represent over 6,000 jobs. We represent over $400 million in wages and over $691 million in investments into the area. It's a fairly significant player at the table, although often we're not viewed as one organization, but we do have something to say, and we have a lot to contribute to the growth in our city and in our neighborhoods. I think we kind of need to get it straight that as home builders and developers, we agree with development charges. We're not arguing the principles behind them. We're not arguing that growth needs to help pay for growth. We recognize that, and we have all collected development fees on behalf of the municipalities from people buying new homes, and we will continue to do that. But we want to be clear that our resistance to some of the increases to development charges has not to do with the profitability of our industry, but it has to do with the accessibility to proper housing and affordability. And I can appreciate that when you look at it in terms of a percentage base, that a 2% increase may not look that much, but when you're 2% on a large number, that effectively is $10,000. And passing an increase on like this to any of the projects going on for a new home unit, that's $10,000 that a resident of the city of Belleville has to have saved up in order to buy that new house that they won't have to have had before the increase came into place. So it's real dollars, and they're real significant amounts as they add up. We want to know and point out that increasing these charges is not just a pot that can collect money, that it has real significant impact on affordability in the city, and it goes beyond just the affordability, the cost of a house. We look forward to a 20-year capital campaign with the city that we can all engage in and can be ambitious, and that we can achieve great things and great growth in the city. But we want to just kind of highlight that what this current DC study is laying out for us all. And we've got some fancy graphs too. So the one thing that we want to point out is, and no offense to Peter, but the development charge study has a lot of subjectivity to it. It's based on studies, it's based on reports that are based on reports that are based on assumptions, and they try to calculate everything you want to do with the city, and it just creates this large number. And it's presented as something that's infallible because it's science, and that's just not how it works. And you can see that in terms of the proposal that was given a year ago and the proposal that you have today, and the work that we did as community members with city staff and with the consultants. The numbers are different. And there are a lot of projects that can be added, that can be allocated differently, and that the development charge study can change. It's not written in stone, and it can reflect something that's realistic. I'll draw your attention to the pie chart here. So what the proposal is, as Peter has said, is the increase to the capital budget as it pertains to growth. So the type of capital campaigns and investments that will happen where DC charges are eligible over the 20-year period amounts to basically $550 million. So if you divide that out by the 20 years, that would be a capital budget of $28 million needed each year to meet those obligations of those projects for the development charges collected, if they're collected at the rates suggested. So if you see on that pie chart, the light gray and the orange represents the non-residential and the residential contribution that would be allocated towards that $28 million a year. The 0.7 million is the current reserves in the development charges that haven't been spent yet or allocated yet, and that tiny little yellow one is grants and stuff that are going to offset the costs. So the elephant really in the room is, yes, it's an increase per unit per house that's felt directly by the purchaser, but there's still $22.5 million that needs to come up every year to meet the obligations of what the study is proposing. So that has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from taxpayers. And what we need to see is, what is the plan then to do that? Because to collect the development charges based on it with no intent to ever build it out or to ever actually raise those funds in addition to it is collecting DC charges that don't need to be collected. So I just think it's really important to note that this isn't done in a vacuum. This has consequences beyond the actual dollars we're talking about that would be collected per unit. It does have an impact on affordability and attainability, like we've said. People are coming, they're doing that drive as far as you can afford. And that's going to continue to happen as housing costs increase within the larger urban centers and moves out. People are driving to where they can afford. But once you're driving, it's not that hard to go 20 kilometers further down the highway and make your decision to buy. I think we have a really good thing going on in the city of Belleville. Our competitive advantage is shining, and it's really been shining in the last number of years. And I think we need to preserve that. We realize that there are increases, and there are reasonable amounts of increases that can occur and that should occur. If you look at, for example, when I stood here a year ago, asking to reconsider this, housing costs, prices have gone up about 33%. I don't think that would be an unreasonable number to put out there as a reasonable increase in terms of the costs and the valuations we're getting out of the products that we're building. But we need to really understand that impact of, once you're in your house and you get your tax bill every year, what is that going to be? Because at some point, if you're going to spend the development charges collected, that additional large amount needs to be gotten from somewhere. And again, that competitive advantage, we saw in Peter's charts some really high ones and slow ones, but these are our actual neighbors. the actual municipalities, abutting us and that we're interacting with and competing against. And you'll see there in the urban, currently Belleville is at 14,320, and that is running with, in step with a lot of the neighboring municipalities. The proposed one of the 24,299 puts us beyond what Kingston is currently collecting and what Kingston's plans for their large city are in terms of their development charge study. Another aspect that we ask that you consider is the timeliness of the implementation. And I do want this to be clear. We have been working with city staff and with Mr. Ashton and Mr. Ferguson, and those meetings and relationships have been extremely fruitful. We have really appreciated the effort that they've given to us in working through it. But again, this is a really big issue. It's a 172-page report that I don't know if everybody reads up every page and understands exactly what's going on. And by the time we did get the final DC charge study, it was really close to the timelines we're at now. One thing that industry needs and asks for is we ask for the ability to, if you're going to give us an increase, give us time to work it into our pricing models. And typically in the residential construction industry, that's about 6 months. And it wouldn't have to be 6 months from when the bylaw passes. It could be 6 months from when the decision is made as to what that cost is going to be, but allowing the industry time to integrate increase into the models and work it into our pricing strategies is important. In an ideal world, we'd like to see a lesser increase to the development charges, but we want to see a really ambitious capital budget campaign. To put that $28 million into perspective, the one that was approved for last year for growth-related projects was only $2.8 million. And that's a significant amount to take on and to adopt into your strategies going forward. So, in summary, we just want you to consider all the impacts that it's going to have, not just specifically to one person buying a house, but what it means to the overall tax implications, to local buyers and to out-of-town buyers, what that impact is going to have. We would like to see something more reasonable. And what's interesting in terms of the DC study, and as Peter indicated, you have time still to tweak the DC study, but with me I have Arnold Vandermeer, who was a past president of the Home Builders, and he owns Van Meer Engineering. He has done some work in terms of the actual budgets and structures of it. I'm not going to get into the minute details of it, but there are ways we can keep the projects that are on there, and we can understand them in a more reasonable model of when they'll be built out, how they'll be built out, and when we need to collect the funds for that. But he's got a proposal right here that sets it a little more reasonable at just under $17,000 a unit and at just around $13 on a commercial unit. So that work can be done. We don't just have to accept this study as it's presented. We recognize a lot of work has gone into it, but there are parts of it that are subjective, and we can have those input into it to create a fund that is much more reasonable and still maintains growth in the city. Because one thing I do want to make sure is that we are all on the same page. We want to see Belleville grow. We want to have a very healthy construction industry in the city, because as you can see, it has a huge impact on the number of people employed in the city, and the future success of it is important. What was very apparent through our work is we also want to see accountability year over year. If council chooses to pass this development charge as presented, we are really going to be bulldogish that we get yearly reports on those projects, that they're actually getting implemented, that the budgets are actually being put in place, so that we can see that it's going to where it needs to go, that it's not just a large pool of money that's building up that will never be accessed. But as well, it's such an important study, it's such an important part of your budgeting and of how the city grows. We believe that the city needs to look at putting resources to someone in charge of asset management for the city. There are a lot of assets that the city has, and currently it doesn't fall on one person's desk. And in interacting with staff, we see that need, that when development charges come up, that somebody has been working on it all 5 years. Somebody knows where the infrastructure phasing strategy is at, so that decisions can be made with important real data, real-time data, and that we're not just coming up with a plan that sounds really good and is expensive, but isn't really feasible. So we ask that you consider whatever it is that in the end we propose. We think that there can be a development charge that's fair, that is increased, and that can promote growth. We have some pathways forward. We just have to get that into the development charge study so that a reasonable development charge can be adopted.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Van Heusen. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Anyone else like to come forward and make a presentation? Mr. Bax.
Good evening, Your Worship, Councillors. Adrian Bax, Plotters Creek Developments, and the former Settlers Ridge project. I got to tell you tonight it's sold, so I won't be back here bugging you for moving the OP boundary any longer. So the city needs money. We understand that. Developers, builders realize we need money for streets, for sewer, all the things we've already heard about tonight. But I'd like to give you a suggestion. No, I'm going to correct that. I'd like to give you a challenge. Ask staff to see, just like you did with the industrial lands, where we can find double the amount of buildable lots in Belleville. Double the amount of lots will double your DC charges, will double your building permit fees, will double the taxes, and also lower prices, because right now we are running out of building lots. And when we are running out of building lots, we're raising the prices. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bax. Would anyone else like to come forward and make some comments on the development charge, proposed development charge bylaw? Call a second time. Would anyone like to come forward and present any comments on the Development Charges Act? And a third and final time, would anyone like to come forward and present comments on the Development Charges Act? With that, I will declare the public meeting closed. Again, council will consider the report from staff on December the 6th at our capital budget, and then we will make a determination that day. That's my expectation. Of course, the council may amend and do some things, but the plan is for us to make a decision on December the 6th in advance to the requirement for January 25th is when the new bylaw must come into effect. Okay, thanks everybody for their contributions and for their patience. Item number 5 on the agenda, reading and confirmation of the regular council meeting minutes of October 25th and the regular in-camera meeting minutes of October 25th. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Alsap and Councillor Kelly, any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor? It's carried. We'll now move to deputations, and it's my pleasure to welcome our Rotary Mayors of the Week. And again, this year we got back on track after COVID interrupted it, and I had the pleasure on Monday last week to meet 4 bright and energetic and optimistic and forward-looking young people from our schools, and I'm going to ask them to come forward to the podium. Dante Duvas from Albert College, Leo Kim from Eastside Secondary School, Aurora Zek from Nicholson Catholic College, and Karthi Gom from Centennial Secondary School. They are part of the Rotary Mayors of the Week, and that program from our Rotary Club of Belleville provides 1 student from each of the city's secondary schools the opportunity to meet with the executive managers of the city of Belleville, tour all the various departmental operations, and get a chance to really understand their city. So I am so pleased to have you all here. Let's go in order that I introduced you all. So Dante, why don't you come up first and give us a few words about your week as a mayor of the city of Belleville.
Okay.
Yeah, you can if you want. Yeah.
Good evening, Your Worship, and the Belleville City Council members. It is an honor to have been invited to attend your council meeting as one of the mayors of the week. I hope you don't mind that I've written some things down so I won't forget. I'm a bit nervous. For those who don't know me, my name is Dante Duffus, and I am Albert College's representative for the Mayors of the Week opportunity. This semester at Albert, I am enrolled in the Canadian and International Politics class. And in that class, we study different levels of government and how they work. So throughout this past week, my fellow mayors and I got to experience and understand the inner functions of Belleville as a municipality and as a microcosm of the macrocosm of the various levels of provincial and federal governments. So on just the first day, we were shown the political and functional connections that City Hall has with places like the library, the wellness center, and even the wastewater treatment plant. We learned about council positions and meetings and involvement in the federal and provincial levels. We got to see how all of Belleville's daily functions like property, community initiatives, new business, and taxes work together to make a city like Belleville work. Now I know where all the property taxes that my mom is complaining about are going. During the second day and onward, we got to tour through each facility that controls a large aspect of Belleville's infrastructure. Of the many places and things that I learned about touring through the facilities, the ones that interested me the most were the library, the police office, and the bus depot. I know, the bus depot. I found the library to be quite interesting because I had no idea of the variety of initiatives that they provided for the community outside of lending books and movies. I bet you not a lot of people can say that they have seen Belleville and the Bay of Quinty's landscape from the top of the library. That was really cool for me. The police station piqued my interest a lot because I got to learn about how the police handle themselves in political situations and the many precautions that they take to prevent violent and unwanted situations. And you can see how politics and safety can be linked to really important situations like the effects of the George Floyd movement and the Every Child Matters Reconciliation Day. I also got to learn about their forensic science department and see the facilities that they use to study evidence and conduct experiments. Its involvement in multiple disciplines linking politics and chemistry. I love chemistry, so that was a treat for me. And who knew that Belleville had their own CSI? The bus service is not usually something that many people take a good look at or think about deeply, and many take it for granted. The depot is especially interesting because it has many systems that are intricately controlled in order to make it function smoothly for the people of Belleville. They are so far ahead that they are even trying to implement a green initiative in getting electricity-powered buses. The efficiency of transportation and infrastructure is so good for such a small municipality. Imagine how important it is for such a large municipality like Toronto and Montreal, and even bigger cities around the world. Prop to our sister cities. This just goes to show how well Belleville handles the day-to-day functions of its infrastructure. Now I have a clearer understanding of how politics affects our daily lives through the mayors and the municipal council. It shapes the community in which we live in really important ways that we don't even see because they work so well together. I have a better understanding that all the infrastructure for Belleville is crucial for all of us as citizens of Belleville. Much respect to our mayor and council and the heads of all the facilities and services for being so great and showing us around. I learned so much, and also a big shout out to all the Rotary representatives for everything. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dante. Leo, I'm going to call on you next, please. Yeah, we'll recognize them all at the end when they finish up. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Leo Kim. I am a representative of Eastside, formerly known as Moira, which they changed the name of recently. So coming into the Mayor of the Week program, I had a question in mind of how has COVID affected all of Belleville's community and facilities, right? So I asked these questions to most of these people and their communities. And for example, the transportation or the transit, they actually developed a lot of different things because of COVID. Like, for example, they have a on-demand transportation bus. Well, I didn't know this before because I actually had to walk home for 2 hours because I actually didn't know that, but and because of COVID, they actually developed a lot of technology. For example, payment. Like before, you had to have coins, but now it's all online, and I found that pretty cool. Also, I'm pursuing business as my program for university. So coming to the City Hall, I got to meet all the financial and business part of things, and I learned how that worked. And for, the Wellness Center, yes. In the Wellness Center, we were pretty late coming into there. However, we learned that for their energy and their heat, they actually save a lot and distribute their heat around the Wellness Center. So the numbers we were told is that for every $1 that they spend, they actually save 98 cents, which I thought that was pretty efficient, but I'm not sure how that compares to other facilities. And my favorite place was the police station. Before we were told that we were gonna learn gang signs, but yeah, I don't know how that would end out. So I also expected jail cells with bars, but they also didn't have that. And the final place we actually visited was, before that we actually had a meal with the mayor, and in that meal we actually got to talk about a lot of things that we learned throughout the week. So I asked quite a bit of questions to the mayor, and one of the standout things was how the media and the public affect decision making, and we got an example of the development or the construction of a road. However, a majority of the people did not like that, so we were told that they changed the plan and developed a different area. That's everything for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leo. Aurora, why don't we have you next, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Aurora Zek. I am the Nicholson Catholic College candidate. I'm in grade 11. I'm currently in gym class and 15th century history. I was supposed to talk about my favorite activity or thing we did, but I couldn't just pick one. Everything we did this week was amazing. With the exception of the sewage plant, it was fun, but the stench is still lingering with me. Before being chosen as my school's candidate, I had no clue about everything that went into running a city. It was highly fascinating seeing that everyone plays a key role in our functioning city. To getting back on track, if I absolutely had to choose one thing, it would be meeting all the different workers and people that ran the facilities we visited. Being able to see the true love and drive that all these people had for what they did was truly amazing. With COVID-19 affecting our lives so greatly and locking us in our houses and robbing us of social interaction, it was really hard for some people to come back and just be in the groove that they used to be. But seeing how motivated that these people were, it was truly inspiring. So if I had to pick a specific stop or facility that I loved, would have to be a toss-up between City Hall and the library. I'm extremely into history and art, so seeing what went into the galleries and all the behind the scenes of it was really inspiring. And seeing all the history that was behind Belleville, especially learning about Jane Forrester, our first female mayor. As a female hoping to go into politics, seeing another female in such a powerful position really made me more certain of what I want to do with my future. If there was anything I could change, it would be giving us more time to really capture all the great things we saw. So, this program was amazing. I absolutely had so much fun. And I would recommend this not to just people that were interested in politics, but to anybody. It was amazing. And plus, you get lots of freebies. I would like to thank my guidance counselor, Mr. Wood, and my principal, Mr. Stewart, for selecting me for this great opportunity, as well as all the council members, the workers at City Hall, and the Rotary Club, as well as my parents for driving me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. And Carthy, let's have you come up now, please.
Good evening. My name is Carthy Gomes from Centennial Secondary School, and I'm currently in grade 12. I was chosen by my school to be a part of the Rotary Mayors of the Week program, and it has been a wonderful experience. I've enjoyed being with my peers from different schools and meeting with such inspiring people in various careers that I was unaware of before, and of course getting a thorough understanding of the life of a mayor. Out of the many of the interesting places that we toured, there were two that really astonished me. As someone who loves science, the first was the water treatment plant. It amazed me because of the extreme planning of the massive project, from pre-treatment to coagulation, flocculation, filtration, and adjusting for the seasons. I found it to be very organized. They also had displayed old equipment from the 20th century, which really shows you the advancement of technology over the many generations since the original Belleville pump house in 1887. And my second and favorite place was the police headquarters, because I love seeing how the department works and the various spaces that they had created, like resting rooms, for everyone to feel comfortable. And one information that Chief Callahan told us that really stood out to me personally was their 30 by 30 goal. It was their aim to reach 30% of female recruits and officers by the end of 2030. And from the current 20%, I was very glad and inspired to see that more diversity is being encouraged and motivated for everyone in the community. Overall, I have had a tremendous experience being a part of this opportunity. I loved visiting every place, and of course the little compliment bags that they give you every time. I realized that being a mayor or anyone who works for our community is truly trying to increase the diversity and implement inclusive, modernized techniques into our everyday lives for the betterment of our society. I would like to extend a special thanks to the Rotary representatives who guided us and took us to the places, and the terrific people who gave us tours and information of the facilities, and everyone who took time to explain and provide us with this possibility even during COVID. I'm grateful for this chance, and I feel that I've gained valuable knowledge and memories for the future. Thank you.
Good. Colleagues, our 2021 Rotary Mayors of the Week. And I think it's very important for us to thank the Rotary Club of Belleville as well. This week, as far as I understand, Jennifer Savini, Shannon Neely, and John Smale were, I don't want to say they were assistants. They traveled with the group to make sure everything was okay and all the details were taken care of. I see Jennifer's in the audience, and we certainly want to thank all of them. And what a wonderful story you all have told about seeing what we see all the time through fresh eyes. And it's really inspiring, and we certainly hope that we will see you somewhere in the future sitting around our table and joining in the leadership of the city and taking us forward. I do have some certificates I'm going to present. I'll be right back there with you. So let's go backwards in the order of presentations. We'll start with you, Carthy, and Jenna's over here to take a picture of us. Where do you want us? Right here, Jen? So, Carthy, congratulations on your week. There we go. Okay, and then I've got Aurora next. Yeah, we'll do on that. Yeah. Okay, and then this you can keep onto that. Hang on to that. Leo. There you go. Congratulations. And the best for last, Dante. Good. And can we get all four of us over here? And you can take that. And two on, how about you and Aurora on that side, and Leo and Bertie on this side. Does that work for you, Jenna? Okay, John? It's going to make us all famous. Here we go. Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks for
Thank you so much.
You all did so well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our future is in good hands as we look forward. So I need a resolution to receive the presentation by the Rotary Mayors of the Week, moved by Councillor Alsap, second by Councillor Carr. All in favor, it's carried. Mr. Maria, thank you for your patience. Thank you. Please come forward. Ahmed Maria is the Director of Transmission Planning from the ISO, Independent Electricity System Operator, who's going to be making an important presentation to Council regarding the future of energy usage and plans for expanded usage in the future. Thank you for your patience. We don't normally have the meetings before you today, so we really do appreciate you being with us. Welcome.
Thank you. And that sounded like an incredible program, by the way. A great opportunity for these students. Okay, so my name is Ahmed Maria. I'm the Director of Transmission Planning at the Independent Electricity System Operator. Over the past 18 months, we've been working with Alexicon, Hydro One Transmission, Hydro One Distribution, and a number of other local distribution companies to develop an electricity plan for the Peterborough to Kitchener region. And so I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about the recommendations in that electricity plan that are specific to the city of Belleville. So before we begin, though, I thought it would be helpful if I gave you a little bit of a brief overview of the electricity sector in Ontario. I talked a bit about the participants in the sector, the role of the IESO, and generally how electricity planning is done in the province. So the slide in front of you shows the key participants in the Ontario electricity sector, and I'll just work from the left of the slide to the right of the slide. So we have generating companies. They own the power plants, the nuclear plants, solar plants, hydro plants, and they basically produce the electricity that we consume. And so examples of these companies would include Ontario Power Generation, Bruce Power. These are the type of companies that own these power plants. Hydro One owns 98% of all of the transmission in Ontario, and essentially what the transmission system does is delivers power that's produced at these power plants to industrial customers like mines and manufacturing facilities, and to local distribution companies. And so an example of a local distribution company would be the one servicing the city of Belleville, which is Alexicon and Hydro One Distribution. So what these local distribution companies do is that they take power from the grid, from the transmission system, and distribute it to the homes and businesses in the cities that they serve. So if I applied, and they do this through what we call a step-down transformer station. So basically, the local distribution company withdraws power from the grid through a step-down transformer station and distributes it to the businesses and homes in the city. So if I were to apply this to the city of Belleville, the local distribution companies that service the city are Alexicon and Hydro One Distribution. They withdraw power from the grid through a step-down transformer station that's called Belleville TS. TS stands for transformer station. Belleville TS is about 1 kilometer north of the train station, and it pretty much supplies this entire city. So in this presentation, you'll be hearing me talk about the capacity of Belleville TS and the capacity of the transmission lines that Belleville TS is connected to, and its ability to supply the electricity needs of the city over the next 20 years. So I thought it would be useful to provide this context. We also have the provincial government. They set the direction and policy for the sector, and we have the Ontario Energy Board. They're the regulator for the sector, and they essentially set the distribution rates, the transmission rates, the ISO fee, and they approve transmission, the construction of transmission lines. The ISO, the company I work for, plays a very central role in the electricity sector. We don't own any transmission or assets or any generation assets, but what we do is we operate the system in real time, basically dispatching generation on a second-by-second basis in order to balance the supply for electricity with the demand for electricity. That's one of our functions. We also operate the electricity markets that procure the electricity services that we need to reliably operate the system. We administer energy efficiency programs and conservation programs. We support innovation through funding of innovative pilots and research. And we also plan for the future. And so that's the part of the company that I work for. And so planning for the future really involves forecasting how electricity will be used in the province over the next 20 years, and then identifying what electricity infrastructure is needed to supply that demand for electricity. In Ontario, we do electricity planning on multiple levels. We have a provincial planning process that basically looks at the province's needs. And so it looks at, for example, do we have enough generation capacity in the province to supply the provincial demand for electricity? And then we also have a regional planning process. That's more customer focused. It basically looks at whether or not, for example, the city of Belleville has sufficient electricity supply for the next 20 years. And so what I'll be talking about now is the regional plan that we developed for this region, where the city's located. So maybe a little bit more about regional planning. For the purposes of regional planning, Ontario has been divided into 21 regions. The city of Belleville is part of the region that we call the Peterborough to Kingston region. And that region, and so essentially for each region, we have a working group consisting of the ISO, Hydro One Transmission, and the local distribution companies in that region. And together, they work together to develop an electricity plan for the region every 5 years. Just today, we released the electricity plan for the Peterborough to Kingston region. And as I said, I'm here to talk to you about the recommendations specific to the city of Belleville in that plan. So this is just an overview of the region. I'll probably skip this one. So I'll talk. So this slide here shows a summary of the recommendations in the electricity plan that are specific to the city. So we worked with Lexicon and Hydro One Distribution to develop a forecast of electricity demand for the city over the next 20 years. And generally what that forecast shows is that the demand for electricity in the city will grow by about 1% per year. And that considers the city's official plan. It considers industrial development. It considers many different factors. And basically considering all of that, we're seeing an increase in demand by about 1% per year. As part of the study, we looked at the capacity of Belleville TS, which is that step-down transformer station that supplies the city. And we looked at the capacity of the transmission lines that Belleville TS is connected to, the ones owned by Hydro One. And what we generally found was over the next 20 years, the transmission lines have sufficient capacity to supply the needs of the city. However, the step-down transformer station that does not, and hence what this plan recommends is a second step-down transformer station to supply this city. And so that's one of the recommendations in this plan. Beyond the 20 years, looking beyond the 20 years, we're seeing that the transmission lines that Belleville TS is connected to will not have sufficient capacity, and so an additional transmission line may be needed. However, that's so far out in the future. We'll look at that again in the next cycle of electricity planning for this region. So I'll just skip a few slides and talk a bit about this new supply station that we're recommending in the plan. Essentially, it would be an expansion of the existing Belleville TS. It would be located at that site. It would cost about $35 million to build. It will supply the needs of the city so with that station built, the electricity needs of the city will be supplied for the next 20 years. And we're thinking the in-service date will be around 2025 after it's gone through all the approvals and construction process. Beyond, as I said, beyond those 20 years, the station won't be enough. We'll need to build another transmission line to supply the city. But that's something that we'll look at in more detail in the next cycle of planning, which will start around 2025. A hypothetical line like that would cost on the order of $140 million. As part of the planning, though, we will be looking at non-wire alternatives to the line. So we'll be looking at energy efficiency programs, conservation, as a way of reducing the effective electricity demand in the city and deferring the need for this transmission line. But all that's very far in the future, so it's something that can wait until our next cycle of electricity planning for the region. This slide here kind of summarizes everything that I've been talking about. On the y-axis, it represents the demand for electricity in the city. The x-axis is time, so basically over the next 20 years. The red line there is the demand for electricity in the city, and you see that it's growing. It's growing by roughly 1% per year. The black line is the capacity of Belleville TS today. The purple line is the capacity after it's expanded with a second step-down transformer station. And so you can see with that expansion, the needs of the city are met for the next 20 years. Beyond the 20 years, we would need to build a new supply line and a new transmission line. And when we've done that, the green line represents the capacity, supply, demand, the demand of the city. So this is a bit of a summary of everything I've talked about. So really the next steps here is Hydro One Distribution and Lexicon will contact Hydro One Transmission about constructing this facility and get that process going. So right now we're very early, obviously. This plan was just released today and identified the need for this. The next step now is to actually get the process going and getting it constructed. And so the distribution, the local distribution companies that service the city will get that work started. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present these recommendations, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Murray, for joining us. You know, as we plan the future of the city, you can do all the roads you want and you can build all the houses you want, but if we don't have electricity to deal with those needs, our city is really going to be limited going forward. And so, you know, you're talking about the fact that ISO is leading a process to ensure that we have sufficient supply in the future. It's not going to slow us down from that growth is really important. So when you talk about that step-down transformer station, which is on just off of University Avenue, just adjacent to the Northeast Industrial Park, back in January 2020, just before COVID, I was at you know, coincidentally, I was at a Lexicon meeting. And the new president of ISO, Leslie Gallinger, had been the president of Lexicon Energy, and we were called into an emergency meeting to discuss a malfunction or a piece of damaged equipment at that transformer station, which required us in very short order to have to shut the entire city down to be able to do those repairs. Because if the station should have failed, we may have seen us out of power for up to a week. This was an expected 4 to 5 hour interruption of service while we could do it. But it was a great disruption to the city, all of our emergency services, hospitals, nursing homes, industrial partners, you know, businesses, everybody was really interrupted. And so my understanding is that transformer station's operated by Hydro One, and they have added the capacity to create a redundancy so that we won't have to see that again. We have a backup in the event that something should happen to one of those transformers. What you're talking about is basically adding another full transformer, and that will be for that future growth, correct?
That's right, exactly right.
And that second transformer, you believe, will be online for 2025 based on the recommendations?
Yep. So that's the expected in-service date for it.
Right. And you know, I guess we currently do have a little bit of a peak electricity issue. Some of our large industrial partners that are consuming, we have capacity. This second transformer will deal with that, but we also have to continue to be energy efficient and reduce that peak capacity and find alternative technologies, correct?
Correct.
How do you, from your working with Hydro One and Alexicon, they're speaking to you about some of their plans to deal with that gap between what they would like to use and what we can supply. How comfortable are you with that those plans are going to be able to manage that load issue?
So you're talking about the gap until the station is built
Yeah.
in 2025?
And yeah, until the new station's online.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so as I said, the issue here really is around the distribution system at this point. Like the transmission lines which the ISO operates, they have sufficient capacity for the next 20 years. So I think a question like this around around the connection of like the ability to connect to industrial customers in the meantime should be answered by Lexicon. But I think from my discussions with them, I'm pretty comfortable that they can do it.
They're doing it.
Yep.
Good, excellent, thank you. Colleagues, anybody have any questions for Mr. Maria? So if we can just get a copy of your presentation for council that we can consider later on. We really want to thank you for taking the time to come and visit us. And hopefully you haven't interrupted your plans for returning. You're going to be okay?
No, I'm still good. 6:30 is my train.
Okay, well then we're all set. Otherwise we would have had to ask the police service to get you back faster. But thank you very much for coming. Please give our regards to Ms. Gallinger. We enjoy working with her as well as with you as well.
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
So colleagues, the resolution is that the deputation by Ahmed Maria, Director of Transmission Planning for the Independent Electricity System Operator regarding plans to meet Belleville's immediate and long-term electricity needs as part of the active regional electricity planning cycle currently underway in the region be received. Moved by Councillor Feeney, second by Councillor Millette. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Now, Mr. Van de Hoff from Bridge Street is not able to attend with us this evening, so we won't be dealing with his deputation. So I'll move on to correspondence. Item 7.1 is correspondence regarding proposed bylaw number 2021-160, which was received and has been forwarded to all members of council under separate cover. So I need a resolution that correspondence received from area residents regarding proposed bylaw number 2021-160, an amendment to traffic bylaw number 12967, Schedule B, parking restrictions near the Belleville General Hospital, be received. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? It's carried. Yes.
Could I have that referred to the Transportation Committee?
Sure. So can we, sorry, the mover and seconder was Alsap and Thompson. So Councillor Alsap and Councillor Thompson, we're going to amend that motion to be received and referred to the Transportation Committee. Are you okay with that as the mover? Yep. And obviously okay with the seconder. And so anyone have any objection? So the motion is passed amended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7.2, correspondence from the Belleville Police Service. Just one moment. Sorry, I'm just consulting with the clerk because Mr. Vanderhoff's presentation was part of the reason why we're bringing this forward, and so I just want to find out the right way that we should handle it moving forward. Okay, we're going to proceed with the resolution and then have availability for discussion and reference if necessary. So the correspondence from the Belleville Police Service is in response to a request that council made to the Belleville Police Service, and I'll have a resolution to get the item on the table and then we will discuss it. The resolution is that correspondence received from the Belleville Police Service regarding a homelessness report and non-resident criminal activity in the city be received. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Anyone wish to discuss this? And so we're not in committee of the whole, so you do have to stand up during this discussion. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. And I also was wondering if I could introduce another piece of correspondence which somehow relates to that. I did send it to council over the weekend, and I'm wondering if I can add that onto the existing correspondence with from the police service.
Yeah, Councillor McCaw circulated that to everybody, I believe, on Friday.
I circulated
and so, Mr. McDonald, do you have a copy of it? Here you go, and that'll be part of the record. Go ahead, Ms. McCaw. Or Councillor McCaw, I'm sorry.
So what I've asked to be distributed before you is a piece of correspondence from our Community and Human Services meeting, and I think it's relevant to what we're talking about now as it relates to the Grayson report. I've added it because I think it's part and parcel to what brought the statistics here from the Police Service Board. Originally, last year, Councillor Culhane had originally made a request to Chief Ron Gignac. She was wanting to know about calls for service statistics between 2019 and 2020. Given Councillor Culhane's passing last year and COVID, this report never made it to council at that time, but some of the statistics here relate to some of that. What came out of the request of Councillor Culhane that she made of Chief Gignac was a marked increase of 403% of police calls for service as it related to homelessness and vagrancy between 2019 and 2020. In addition to that, of course, we're seeing the more recent reports from the Belleville Police. I don't think I need to go through them. You've had them for the weekend, and I don't need to get into explaining them. I would like to draw special attention, though, to the Grayson report, where it illustrates that over 30% of the people that had been housed at the shelter were non-residents of Hastings County. That said, those statistics could be worse where Belleville is concerned, because the numbers do not outline Belleville specifically, but rather Hastings County as a whole, and we know how broad and far and wide Hastings County spans. So 30% of the people that had been housed there were not even from our region. So I guess what I would say to that, if you're wondering why you see individuals lining the streets of Church and Bridge, it's possible that some of the residents could be our very own residents. It's also evident that many are not our residents. We know that out-of-town municipalities are delivering people to our region. I'm aware of other police services driving people and dropping them off right here in Belleville. It's a whole lot easier to bring somebody here in hopes they could access services or access housing through Grace Inn, rather than deal with the problems that exist in their municipalities. Further to that, it's my understanding that the Grace Inn refuses to give Belleville and Hastings County individuals priority, yet they reside in our community. They accept funding from Belleville and Hastings County, Community and Human Services. I believe our share is about $14 million that we provide to Hastings County. This funding is finding its way in the hands of Grace Inn, who in turn thinks it's okay to use the taxpayer funding to deal with issues of other communities. So the money we're giving is actually benefiting other communities. Hastings County also makes applications for funding to the province and to the federal government with this in mind, to serve our community. They should be helping our residents, not other communities. At one of our community and human services meeting, there was a remark made to the effect that some of the people complaining about the homeless are rich folks who don't want to see homeless people. But I'd like to clear that up, because these quote-unquote rich folks I hear from are young mothers with children who don't want to play in the park because they don't want to be exposed to dirty, disgusting drug syringes. They're residents who live on Bridge, Queen, William, Charles. They're business owners on Church Street whose their business is being affected by some of the residents defecating on their property, screaming and threatening them, all coming from the Grace Inn. These rich folks are also volunteers at some of the meal programs that actually serve them. And unfortunately, they're also congregation members of some of the churches in the region. These rich, ignorant folks consist of a 77-year-old senior on a fixed income who lives in an apartment on George Street, who's afraid to walk to the Bank of Montreal. These same rich folks consist of downtown business merchants who were threatened by a knife by 2 Toronto implants, not to mention the employees at the TD Bank who are now protected and forced to be protected by security guards. This is our own downtown TD Bank now has a security guard to protect them. And lastly, I would say that these rich folks are our very own city staff who spend a good majority all summer long attending these encampments and taking them down at a rate of 3 to 5 occupations per week at some points, all again at the risk of being pricked by one of these dirty drug syringes. Now I'm sure many will say I'm being heartless and I don't care. Well, I do care. I care about our residents first. Our residents need priority. They need to be prioritized. They need to be served first by our programs. I hear things like I hear, and I see things like I've been seeing, and I find out that our local shelter is not prioritizing our folks first. We can't stay silent on that. We can't allow that to happen when they're getting funding from us and Hastings County. And I did have discussions with this, with Councillor Sanderson about this at one point. He gave me some very sound advice, and I think we should look at this, and I think we should take it. He suggested that maybe we need to implement a policy that, we're only going to fund and give to organizations who prioritize our residents. I mean, that has to happen. In representing our homeless population, we also have to represent our community at large. And honestly, they have the right to feel safe. All residents have the right to feel safe in their community. They have the right to walk freely without dealing with human feces, threats of violence, drug paraphernalia, They should be free to operate their businesses without all of this, without people screaming at their clients, without the loss of business because of it. And quite frankly, people should have the ability to take their children to parks without worrying about tent encampments and needles and syringes and all the garbage that goes along with that. I hope you understand I'm not speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for the many residents who reach out to me every week. I hear from residents every week. I know in speaking with, I believe it was Councillor Feeney, she hears from residents too. I can't speak to anyone else, but we did have a discussion about that. I guess I look to all of you to consider these stats and what we're seeing and hearing and what we know to be true. I think we need to find some hard solutions because this situation is escalating, and I think we're at a crossroads here. When we have businesses that need security guards, we are at a crossroad. We need to take some action here. Not sure what that is, but I'm looking to all of you to help me come to a solution for this. Thank you.
All right, anyone else on this item? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm going to, I realize that Councillor McCaw has got some figures from the Grace Inn, but I think we need to remember, and it's unfortunate Steve wasn't here tonight to present his report from Bridge Street Church. Yeah, we have a situation where people are coming to our residence or coming to our city that are staying at Grace Inn. For us to have that point where we decide who's going to stay at Grace Inn and who isn't, those people, a lot of those people have some mental illnesses, and you know, we got a problem downtown. I work downtown. The situation is not good, but in here, since that new person has been put downtown through the Hastings County and through the Downtown Association to monitor, and for these people that have some mental illnesses, there's been a reduction of some of the complaints downtown. You know, and we complain about Grace Inn. I drive by Bridge Street every day, and I commend them for what they've done at Bridge Street Church. They've taken people in, give them places. There's people there that are talking to them, trying to give them some guidance. But for us to blame it all on Grace Inn is wrong. Bridge Street is providing a spot for them. They have an issue that they need to deal with, and I think it's commendable that they are dealing with these issues at Bridge Street. Mental illness is a problem, and I would be dead set against anybody referring that we are taking people strictly from out of town. People are dropping them off. I'd like to see proof of that they're dropping them off in our city. If somebody can show me proof that that person is dropped off, then I'm willing to accept that. But right now, all we're doing is speculating that people are being dropped off in our city. We have, as a city, we must try to protect the people of all communities, whether they live in Belleville or not. They're coming in. We need to deal with them. How we deal with them, I don't know. But we cannot just say, sorry, folks, there's no room for you. They're going to stay here. They're going to find some place to sleep, and we have them and you know, and we know at Bridge Street, they're staying outside at night because they got no place to go. Are they people that are coming to town? Maybe. But they got mental illness. We need to deal with the mental illness in this city and every city so drastically that, and I sit on, Councillor Millette, sit on the Enrichment Center, sorry Chris, and we see the demand there for mental illness, for guidance for these people. And, you know, we've started it downtown with the DBIA, with that lady working with the people. I just say this report is a great report, and I'm glad to have it, but it's not all negative. And I don't want to start accusing Grace Inn as being the main culprit in our city for homelessness. The saying was before, Councillor Culhane used to say, you build it, they will come. We built Bridge Street, we opened Bridge Street, they came. So what's the difference? We need to look after these people in our community, and I think we need to work with the different agencies that are willing to get out there and help these people, but we don't need to be throwing people out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Millette?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I echo a lot of what Councillor Thompson said, and with all respect to Councillor McCaw's assertion that there are 30% of the people that are using Grace Inn, or somehow extrapolating these numbers to mean that 30% of our problem, or a third of our problems, are people who have just migrated here or have been attracted, the supposed build it and they will come notion that because we have a shelter, ergo we have a homeless problem. We have a homeless problem because we're no different than any other community in Canada. And it's unfortunate that Mr. Vandehoof isn't here tonight, and I know we will hear from him. I had invited him to speak here. He will appear at an upcoming council meeting, but one of the presentations that he will give us is the point in time count that was very detailed and was part and parcel of the Community and Human Services report that Hastings County heard. And a minimum, in that report, and we'll hear that, a minimum of 180 people were experiencing homelessness in Belleville during the 2021 point in time count. And this is a survey that Mr. Vandehoof will explain a little later. A total of 153 individuals were surveyed, including 5 families identified who had 10 dependent children collectively. 17 individuals are staying in emergency shelters, 3 in transitional homes, the transitional homes that Councillor Thompson referred to, operated by the Enrichment Center, and 14 who were not surveyed, and were identified using administrative data. They were others. The point is, we do have a homeless problem, but to try and pigeonhole it into our problem and problems that land on our doorstep doesn't change the fact that we do have a problem. To try and find solutions, I would suggest by insisting that our homeless shelter bar the door to anyone who comes to it unless they show a proof of address or a former proof of address for Belleville, I think is short-sighted and quite frankly a bit cruel. I don't think that kind of thinking, and again with all due respect, is going to help the situation. This group is stigmatized. Yes, they're not nice to look at for a lot of people who want to go to our parks and find that there might be a tent there, might be a fellow huddled under some canvas. No, but I mean, homelessness is an ugly reality, and we have to face that. To try and find a simplistic solution to a broader issue that quite frankly, there are mechanisms happening right now, Community and Human Services. The county is taking a lead role. This winter, we're going to see big changes for our warming center, for instance, because they are taking the lead role on that. There are things happening, and yes, Grace Inn is operating, and they're doing amazing work there, despite the fact some of the neighbors around and the individuals that come there are greatly troubled individuals. But just to claim that it'd be less of a problem if we did this, or if we barred these people, or we insisted these people not come, or these people not be offered services, that I don't think is helpful in the discussion. And again, I think we'll have a broader discussion on this when Mr. Vandehoof appears here, because nobody, in my opinion, has a better insight into an awful lot of this problem than he does. And we've all now, I think, been through the center at Bridge Street, seen the remarkable work they're doing there. Let's, I suggest we hold off this discussion until then. The figures are what they are. Let's see the story behind the figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alsap.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think the first thing I would say is it's sort of a philosophical question. If a person is homeless, then by definition they do not have a residence. So how is it that we can say that 31% do not reside here when they're homeless and they're here and they don't have a fixed residence? Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. The second portion of it that I would mention is that it looks to be that that 31% who may not be from this area, though they do reside in this area currently, would amount to about 118 people. Do we expect that the amount of calls for services, particularly for criminal activity, would go down if we had left those 118 people on the street? My suggestion would be that probably we would not see those statistics would go down. In fact, we'd probably have a greater problem with incidents of homeless people and you know, crime and things of that nature. The next thing was this idea about dirty, disgusting drug needles, which I suppose are used by dirty, disgusting drug addicts would be the what I would extrapolate from that. I believe the numbers that Steve had released, and I wish he were here today, was that only about 8% of the people experiencing homelessness in this area was related to drug use, and about 9% was mental health issues. I imagine there's some overlap in those statistics, but even if you add them together, it's like 17%. So the vast majority of people who are homeless on our streets are not in a situation where they're mentally ill or in a situation where they're drug addicts. These people genuinely need help. I believe the number one issue in the study that Mr. Van Hoof presented, because he presented to our Hastings County committee, I know a number of us are on that committee, was that 80% of them said the number one reason they were homeless was a lack of affordable housing. The other thing that I would mention is there's this stigma about Grace Inn, right? This Grace Inn issue keeps coming up. You know, what were we doing? And some of us were on council before Grace Inn existed. What were we doing about homelessness in our community before that time period? Perhaps there's something to say about the fact that we have not been addressing this for a long period of time. We have had someone come in and address it for us, which is why we provide them funding, because they're taking care of a service in our community. Where would we be if they didn't exist? Would be something to think about. So, I mean, as I look through these numbers, obviously we do have a problem here with homelessness. I would suggest that the response would be probably more supports would be beneficial. This is what we've seen downtown through the work who walks around, talks to the homeless population. We've seen that the number of calls have decreased significantly. I believe that number was in the 80% range to Belleville Police Services, particularly for downtown businesses, because we had someone who was working on the problem. So again, we have an additional support. We have a decrease in the amount of issues that we're having. It would seem that more support would be beneficial, not less support. And, you know, this idea that we would sort of triage people on the basis of where they came from, even though they're here and have sought the help, I mean, I don't think that that's a reasonable thing to ask people to do at the front door, especially when 6% are from unknown origin. So what do you do with that type of person? I think that the result would be that we would need more assistance for them, not less. And I just got a text from one of the people who was on the committee for the Grace Inn. They have also helped to house 50 people over the last year in permanent housing. So we are seeing this transition from homelessness to being in homes that is being done specifically because of the great people and the great work at Grace Inn Homeless Shelter. And I certainly appreciate what they're doing for this community, because remember, before we had them, what was being done? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alsop. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks for the conversation tonight, and it's great to hear all the different perspectives that we have here around the table. So, just listening to people speaking, and with the Belleville Police Service Homeless Report, I am taken back about some of the comments tonight by the Grace Inn. It came to our community in 2019, and has it made a difference for many people? Yes, every night. And in the past 20 plus months, 21 people can stay. It's their home for the night, whether it's that night or they stay for 28 days. You know, there was reference made how many police calls were made to Grace Inn, and if you do the math, the report says there were 158 calls for service to the Grace Inn shelter from December 1st, 2020 to October 15th, 2021. If you do the math, that's 319 days. You divide it, work out the figure, that's every 2 days the cops are showing up. I would believe that the Belleville City Police are showing up at other facilities, twice every 2 days as well. You know, I toured Bridge Street United Church with Councillor Millette and Councillor Thompson and saw the work that goes in there on a daily basis. The washer and the dryer. A gentleman that was homeless from Trenton, his marriage broke up. He was having a battle with the booze, but he had a shelter to go to, a place to play his guitar, be in a sense of a community, and that was Bridge Street that afternoon for Councillor Millette Thompson and myself and this gentleman. Saw the work. Saw the commitment from Hastings Prince Edward Public Health with Christy Reeve. Every day, working with them. It's not an easy solution. This is happening across the country. It's not just a Belleville thing. And when I hear 30% of the folks that are homeless are coming from outside of Belleville, the way I look at that, Councillor McCaw, who cares? Who cares? I'll share you a story. This is the reality of it. 4 months ago, someone came to Belleville that was homeless from the nation's capital. For the treatment to get this person, it took 4 months. Today, 48 days in Belleville General Hospital, making progress. Not a drug addict, not dropping needles all over the city, educated. It's mental health, mental illness. It happens. It doesn't pick its individuals. So when I look at the Grace Inn and what it means to communities and those who are homeless, we're blessed as a community to have it. And it's our responsibility to look after our most vulnerable, whether we like it or not. And they're not all drug addicts. They've lost their way, mental illness. The individual I was talking to you about tonight was on the streets in Ottawa for 1 month. 12 years ago, running a successful law practice. No drugs, no anything. It's an illness, and we have to remember what it is. I've spoken to doctors at Belleville General Hospital till I'm blue in the face. I've spoken to individuals that work at the Enrichment Center. This is an hourly thing. There's so many programs out there. Part of the challenge is to get that individual that needs that support to get there. And another thing I will say about our homeless community is families have given up. I'm telling you here today, I've lived it. You can't give up. As much as it breaks down your family, it's challenging, but sometimes we're the last person that can help that individual. And it kills me when I drive in Belleville and I see the homeless at 4 o'clock in the morning and they're lost. Their family's given up. I've spent time hearing their stories. It's not all drugs. They just lost their way. A couple on College Street the other day, a couple of weeks ago, moved to Belleville from Huntsville. I asked the question, why did you pick Belleville? And the lady told me that her daughter lives in the East End. And I said, can you get into the home with your daughter? Because I was assuming the daughter had a home. And the woman with her boyfriend lugging around their grocery cart and their recycling box, we all see it, and sometimes we turn a blind eye to it. She said, no, my daughter's homeless in the East End, living in a tent. But she wanted to be close to her daughter. For all those that work in the services and health and reach out to our most vulnerable every day, they're a gift to our community. And remember, 5 months ago, somebody that I know quite well, on the streets in the capital, but is on her way, hopefully, to a quality of life because her family didn't give up on her. As tough as it is, our social services are going to be asked to do more. And what is the solution? Turn the blind eye? This is tough conversation, but this conversation needs to be heard. We see it every day. And God bless those souls. I think of them, that they can hopefully, tomorrow will be a better day. And for everyone that continues to support through faith, saying hi to them, it will make a difference. And the last thing I will say, when I spoke to an individual that was on the streets, and I heard her say to a young lady, "It is so nice to hear a voice." And the daughter said, "Really?" She said, "Yes, because for 3 weeks to a month, I haven't heard anybody talk to me." Think of that when you pass someone that you know is homeless. When's the last time someone looked them in the eye and respected them and said hi? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Feeney.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that we're hearing here in all very different ways, and some very emotional, is that we are recognizing that, yes, we do have a problem. And yes, we do need to look at this, not just piecemeal. And there are other communities that are being successful in dealing with their homeless. I did send information to each councillor just as information sharing. Part of that was, yes, there is always going to be a percentage of people that will choose to be homeless, and they exist, but there's also 39 other communities in Canada that are looking at a Built for Zero campaign. And we should just look at things like that. Look to other communities that are taking positive solutions and providing affordable housing and more housing units, period, in their areas. And we don't have to be alone on this. There's an organization out there, a national organization, that will give us some guidance and direction if we choose to go there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Feeney. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So certainly it's a topic that everybody feels passionate about. And as some of my colleagues have said, there's no easy solution. I too, along with Councillor McCaw and Councillor Feeney, toured the Bridge Street facility and talked to Steve and the staff, and we were there probably about an hour. And we talked to the people that were using the facility outside before we went in. And even when we left, we ended up talking to a couple others to hear what they had to say and hear what they had to share. And facilities such as Bridge Street Church and all the other support organizations we've got, and the partnership we've got with Hastings County, maybe we're not doing enough, but we're doing a lot to support these people. And can we do more? You bet we can always do more. And somehow I think through the discussion, we're at a point now where we're getting lots of data, but how do you interpret the data? And how do you use the data? Even the police report, one of the things I picked up on was I think some of in the criminal charges, it was about 50% of the criminal charges were from outside the community. So how does that tie back with data that Steve presented to us, where he says in his point of use report that I think it was 80% of the people that they talked to had been in Belleville for more than 6 years. So, so it's great that we're gathering all this data. I'm just concerned, how do we use it constructively to build on some of the successes we've got? And Grace Inn is a success. There's no argument. The transitional home they're looking at building down on South Front Street, it's going to be a success. So how do we continue to build on it, right? I don't think anybody's down and out in turning a blind eye to the homelessness issue we've got. I just think that we're probably, I'm speaking for myself, we're just frustrated we can't do more. Can't do a better job of it, right? And anyways, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Carr?
Thank you for this. And just looking back at some of the statistics, and was just referenced about 50% of criminal charges, not related to homelessness, but just in general, are non-residents of the city, but only 118 with actually no fixed address. And then another statistic that really jumped out is reasons for calls for service. And this was, according to the police here, targeted with people with no fixed address or homeless. And out of the 266 complaints, with 158 being business and 108 being residential, only 41 or 15% of those complaints resulted in a criminal code charge. And what we don't know is the conviction rate of that charge, because we know that people get charged but don't necessarily get convicted, evidence and things of that nature through the court process. So when I see this, the actual statistics here, homelessness, if you want to put it that way, is not contributing to criminal activity to any great degree. When you're talking 15% of calls for service are actually resulting in criminal offending. So the biggest ones are alcohol and drug. 50 calls were concern for well-being. Again, and we've had this discussion before. It's been said, the police chief will be the first one to say it. The Police Service Act needs to be changed so that the police aren't the first ones being called, because invariably it's not resulting in criminal activity that requires the intervention of law enforcement. What it requires is mental health and addiction. And we've heard this, and I'm not going to repeat what's been said. I'm optimistic the federal government has brought in, is suggesting that they're bringing in billions of dollars for mental health investment across the country. The provinces have committed the same. That is the only way that we're really going to deal with the percentage of people that are causing safety concerns or what have you, is because they're also a safety concern to themselves. And sometimes that behavior frightens people. And if you're not accustomed to it, it's very frightening. I'm 25 years in the correctional service. I can walk down Front Street just fine. And yes, you're going to see maybe somebody fighting addiction, but I'm used to it, so it's different. But it's the reaction and that fear factor more than anything else. I'll just tell a quick story, and I know time's going, but back in the summer, we talked a little bit about pop-ups. And we were down with a family at Zwick's, my family, and one of my daughters ran into an 18-year-old and who she knew earlier. And they talked and find out he's homeless. He's got 6 diagnoses, and his mother doesn't want him at home. And he does have behavioral issues. So we got to talk to him a little bit. Of course, part of my job kicks in, and I start asking about well-being. Have you got your COVID shot? Are you taking your medication? And as we built rapport and started to talk, he got out his blister packs and he showed me, this is the medication I'm taking, and these are my diagnoses. And so I asked him about some follow-up appointments. Long and short of it is, my wife and I worked, and we got him into a treatment facility in Kitchener, of all places. He has an address in Belleville, but for an 18-year-old that requires stability, drug addiction counseling, and things of that nature, we had to find a facility in Kitchener, and they took him. They also enrolled him in the school there so that he could get his grade 12. And I'm not saying this story to give kudos to me, because I don't want to. I'm just showing an example where when you build rapport with people and understand where they come from, there is a story. And behind that story is tragedy. And what they need is a listening ear, somebody they can trust, and somebody that they can guide them to help. And that works. We have great services. Grace In is one tool in our large tool belt. And thank goodness we have nonprofit organizations that step up and to fill that gap. And when I think about the other mental health agencies that are out there, I just simply put out a challenge. Be agile, be flexible, perhaps maybe get outside the office, look at mobile mental health teams, go to where people are, build rapport, build trust. And that's the other factor. A lot of these folks don't trust people. So they don't want to go into Grace Inn because they fall in under structure. They don't trust people. But it's interesting because I spent a lot of time at Grace Inn and Bridge Street with this young man, making appointments and phone calls and what have you. I watched the security team out at Grace Inn. You know, I'm a trained crisis negotiator. They did fabulous work de-escalating a woman in a mental health crisis in the middle of Church Street. In the pouring rain, the security guards stood there and talked to this lady for 45 minutes in the pouring rain. That's what makes the difference. So instead of looking at statistics, which we somehow get forced to do, we have to look at these as individuals with parents, with siblings that require help. And so rather than tearing into an organization, we need to say collectively, what can we do? And if it's a matter of a mental health team, a mobile team that wants to get an organization and wants to take on that initiative, come to the City of Belleville, come to the grant committee, and see if we can help support that initiative. We had a representative here not too long ago, has a mobile dental clinic and doing fabulous work, and that makes a difference in terms of physical well-being, but also mental health well-being. Those type of things are what the city needs our nonprofits to look at, and I can't speak for all of us, but I can certainly say I would entertain those type of initiatives and certainly would have no problems voting in favor of funding them. So I think we just need to step back just a hair and look at what we have and more of a continuum of care approach that we need to take rather than just simply look at, we've got a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. And thank you, everybody. I'll make a few comments and then I'll turn it over to Councillor McCaw, who's the mover, for some brief comments if she wishes to do so. But I think all of us, all of us care about this issue, and we're all trying to find a solution to it. And it's frustrating for all of us because we are a kind and compassionate community, and we want to be caring and helpful. And we're a charitable and we're a loving community. And we have many supportive programs that we participate in. But I think we're overwhelmed, just like the program delivery organizations are overwhelmed. There has been an increase in people suffering from homelessness in our community. And I think with all due respect, we're fooling ourselves if we believe that these individuals are all coming from our community. We have proof that there are a number of people coming here because there are programs that they know are available. I'll remind everybody, this winter, we had a very unfortunate fatality in the Quinte Hotel parking lot. How did that person arrive in Belleville? He was driven here by the OPP from Napanee. We had vacant spaces that evening in the warming center. The person didn't wish to follow the rules, and a tragic outcome came. For people to suggest that that's not happening is just like it would be this big an error as suggesting that everybody who's suffering from homelessness doesn't come from our community. And I think, we need to understand that we're not the only ones talking about this issue. This is being spoken about in every home in the city. Everyone in the course of the last year has had some conversations about this growing issue. And so it's important, I think, for us to recognize that we have seen a different type of problem in the past year, particularly since the encampments in Toronto last summer were dealt with. Speaking with mayors across Ontario, there has been a migration of individuals west, north, east along the 401 corridor, and we're all struggling to deal with those services. There has also been an increased severity of individuals dealing with mental health. There have been an increase in assaults on our police officers. That is fact. And there has been an increase in complaints from property owners because of vandalism or other types of issues. When we talk about some of the challenges that organizations are dealing with, we have had already this year, our city staff, so just our city staff, They have cleaned up 58 illegal encampments in the city, encampments which were very serious health and safety risks for members of the public, but also people that were there. The city of Sudbury right now has had to relocate their Remembrance Day ceremonies because of an encampment at the cenotaph. And I say that because, you know, people say, well, this is only happening in Belleville. It's not. It's happening in every single community. But I also see that I'm sensing a shift in our community because we're not able to effectively deal and help people who are suffering. You know, in 2020, I don't have the 2021 budget, but it would be higher. But in 2020 alone, you know, the city of Belleville contributed over $14 million to Hastings County to run a variety of programs, including over $7.4 million that went just for community and human services. And the unfortunate thing is at the end of the year, there will be funding and funds that go unspent because there are individuals who are refusing the assistance, either because they don't want it or they're not able to make that decision. You know, we have some tremendous organizations, and you know, my personal feeling is I'm grateful for the work that Grace Inn, Bridge Street, the Salvation Army, all of these organizations, you know, have done and are doing. But I know from speaking with them that they are also overwhelmed by the demand. And you know, that's the question, I guess, is what do we do? Particularly where all of the discussion that I've heard today, all of the potential solutions about, you know, mobile mental health clinics and, you know, and people make suggestions about housing and all these things. None of those are municipal areas of responsibility. None of them. And this is a problem that is in every community in Ontario. If you go to Kingston, you will see the same issue. And you will see people who are frustrated because we're not able to do something. You know, again, the real responsibility for this lies with the provincial government, who are required to provide these services. And the catch and release program, where police are dealing with mental health related issues, they find somebody who's done something that's not appropriate, they've taken them to the hospital, they're released, they take them to jail, they're released. It's not helping anybody. Meanwhile, the municipality, we're the ones that have to deal with it on that level. So I know, I don't want this to sound trite, you know, to say, as some have said, that, you know, this is what comes with the territory, or this is how these types of issues are. This is not a new problem. It is perhaps more new to us in Belleville, but it's not a new problem. Other communities have been dealing with homelessness for decades and even longer. The question is that, as I said, it's new to us, and we are frustrated because we cannot do more about it. And so I just, you know, think that that is what I want to focus on, is that Belleville City Council, we care about being more effective. We care about being able to find programs and supports that are more helpful. We're looking forward to Hastings County operating the warming center this winter with enhanced programming, not just to give people somewhere to go when it's cold, which is very important, but also to ensure that they can access services and programs, to try to get off that cycle of dependency and get off the street and into programs to get clean and to get help and to move forward, because I think that is what our community really wants. But at the same time, we also want to be safe and secure and ensure that everybody's security is paramount. So I know Mr. Van de Hoff will come at a future meeting. I know that the Health and Human Services Committee of Hastings County, and I'm grateful to all the members that sit on it for the City of Belleville, will continue to work. There is going to be Ms. Suzanne Ritchie-Raymond, who is the new director, is going to be coming up with a program or a plan for the rest of the year and starting in the new fiscal year. And we hope that those will be effective. And I'm just grateful to everybody that we care enough that we're trying to find solutions. And sure, we may disagree on what the solution should exactly be, but we are trying to find a way through this. I thank everybody for their comments tonight. Councillor McCaw, I'll recognize you. I would, if I can make a friendly suggestion. I think we said a lot tonight, and you know, Perhaps we need some time to digest everything, if I can just say it that way.
Thank you, and I have nothing more to add anyway. I think I've pretty much stated what I wanted to say. And the only thing I will say is I did spend time at Bridge Street. They are doing wonderful work. But many of those people I saw are the same people Councillor Culhane and I saw at the Salvation Army. So I know these people. What bothers me is that we have a shelter there that should be housing our people. Those people should be housed in that facility. This is no slight on Grayson. I just feel that these people are our community. Those are the people we represent. Those are the people I represent. And I want to see them housed in any way I can. And if that means bringing awareness to this very report, which, by the way, was produced by Grayson themselves, then I'm going to bring awareness to it. And that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the resolution is to receive this information. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. All right. Well, let's start the business portion of our meeting. I need a motion to go into committee of the whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations, and resolutions with myself and the chair. Moved by Councillor Alsap, second by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. Let's move to 8A, reports. The agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from council. Requests for proposals award, supply of real estate services. It is the Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report number DCS 2021-45, and the resolution is that the request for proposals RFP Corp 2021-03, submission from eCourt Realty Limited Joe Chinook, be accepted for supply of real estate services, this being the most qualified proposal received, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A2, licensing and regulation, short-term accommodations. The Director of Corporate Services, Clerk's Report number DCS 2021-46. The resolution is that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services, Report number DCS 2021-46, a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2006-140, business licensing bylaw related to short-term accommodation, be prepared for Council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Feeney. And I just want to start off by thanking Director McDonald for bringing this report forward. We had asked for this, and it gives some suggestions for enacting the first step, which is to have business licensing. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this issue? Councillor Alsop.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. So one of the things that I noticed as I was going through the report is I didn't see a cap on the number of licenses that would be issued.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we've seen in other municipalities is that these licenses make the properties more valuable because obviously they can operate as a business as well as a residence. So I was wondering if we had some clarity on that. And then the other thing was which department would be overseeing the licensing process? Would it be economic development?
So I can answer partially, and I'll ask Mr. McDonald. So if we pass this supplemental bylaw that requires, regardless of the number, that all STAs are required to be licensed, that will be handled through corporate services and will be enforced through bylaw services. So in the same way that our bylaw inspection staff would go and make sure that businesses have a proper business license or whatnot, they would handle that part of it. Mr. McDonald, I wonder if you can speak to the difference between what you're proposing today and the discussion we had at the last meeting, which was suggesting that we might in the future want to regulate the amount of STAs in particular areas of the city. That could be as small as a particular neighborhood, it could be larger in terms of quadrants, and then why you're recommending that the licensing bylaw be this first step that we take.
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Alsop and to all of council. So I think what's being proposed right now, and we'll come back in the form of a schedule to the licensing bylaw, will have some of the provisions that are noted in the report. So limiting number of days, limiting number of rooms, things of that nature, which are pretty consistent. So it became apparent really quickly in looking at what was going on around the province. that a lot of municipalities have crossed this bridge. A lot of them have been challenged. It went to the OMB, which gives you a kind of a timeline of when this started. So some of the early adopters did it before it was LPAT, which has changed so from OMB to LPAT to the current version. So I think what I'm proposing, as the mayor has stated, is to start with regulating the industry in the city. As we stated at the last meeting, 2 meetings ago, we're still not completely convinced we know the saturation level, the complete number of STAs that are operating in the city. We're not convinced we have a great handle on that. So we're going to introduce it at this point in this manner. Start out with some regulation. And the report states that we're going to be coming back to council looking at how this goes and proposing potential changes to that. That might include zones. We introduced payday loan regulation not that long ago, and we limited the number of those per zone in the city. That's something that could be on the horizon depending on what this looks like as we proceed. The majority of municipalities have gone down this road, have done it through a significant process with lots of public input. Most have done it in conjunction with their zoning bylaw. We're in a really unique position, which council is very much aware of with the official plan coming to council, that it's been done in conjunction with an OP amendment limiting per zone if that's been the wish of council. So that's a bit of a challenge for us just based on where we are with the OP. But I think, again, as a first step, we want to put some form to it all, get some voluntary compliance on the front end, figure out what the time component is. By law, we met as a group of staff with all of the people that would be involved in looking at these units, fire prevention, bylaw enforcement. At some point, you may have building involved, you may have public health involved, and what the workload is now versus what it could be if we add the potential workload to it. All of those work units said we're near capacity with what we have at staffing levels and resources today. So depending what you add, what the workload is, even though it will be cyclical, licensing on a yearly basis, we're at capacity. The challenge being what municipalities are experiencing in the province is its compliance. And this, make no mistake about it, in certain segments of the province, this is big business. Prince Edward County is a great example. They think they have a good handle on the scope of the issue in the county. It will be interesting to watch that from a neighboring community as we start down the same road. Some of the early adopters, GTA, Toronto municipalities, Blue Mountains, thought they had a great handle on it when they started, only to find out that they didn't really know the scope because some of the traditional platforms, Airbnb, VRBO, don't encompass the entirety of the STAs. Some of them are done by word of mouth, some are done just by Facebook groups. So there's all sorts of platforms that are not regulated or don't just generally pop up that become apparent over time. So I think we're taking a first step, starting down the road of licensing through some regulation. And I think we'll find out what the scope is here. And we may be back to council looking to modify what we're doing and how we're doing it at a future date.
Councillor Feeney.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, Mr. McDonald has touched base on the things that I wanted to discuss, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carr?
Yes, thank you. So with regards to the draft bylaw that will come forward, just in terms of the regulatory framework that will come with it, and I know that in the clerk's report there's a number of examples, and I guess not being first out of the gate, we have the luxury of at least seeing what has been appealed at LPAT and can craft accordingly. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me in each of the different sampling of municipalities was that it had to be a primary residence. The operator had to be there, or at least have the residence, and then there would be a maximum of 3 rooms per principal residence. Is that kind of the framework we're looking at?
Through the chair to Councillor Carr, some consideration, and I've reached out to some other communities more our size, so that was That was an early adopter, and there's some municipalities that have gone down there. That was, whether that was in Midland or Toronto, it went to the OMB and was ruled on. There was an amendment to a couple of early bylaws to that effect about the principal residence and then the maximum number of rooms in a principal or primary residence. There was some kind of interchanging of those terms early in this. Certainly we'll draft it with a couple of options for council to look at. It's a bit of a challenge from an enforcement perspective because a lot of STAs are done right from the get-go as an investment for the property owner. So not purchased and not intended to be a primary residence. Quick conversation with some communities larger than us that have gone down this road have been challenged and are still waiting for rulings. I mean, COVID put a real slowdown on Superior Court ruling on a lot of things. This is some of them. They've gone outside of the regulatory framework of the LPAT challenge related to zoning or property use. They're going right to Superior Court. So there's a couple that are waiting, and that's one of the things that is in the hopper there. It's that restriction on use of an open market for open market. So it's business practice, it's very challenging. And I'm not going into this being naive, and I don't think council should not think that there are some organized entities doing this as a commercial enterprise and aren't keeping an eye on who's introducing bylaws regulating this type of industry and may or may not challenge what gets put in place.
Okay, no, and I certainly appreciate that. I think your microphone went down. I certainly appreciate that. I guess what stands out to me is that if the principal owner is there, then there's less enforcement that would have to be done by the municipality. You know, we often hear of absentee landlords, for example, and we know we have that issue, and trying to chase that down and deal with those issues on property standards can be difficult. It's a lot easier, I think, to enforce or to keep the noise down or the garbage down if the owner's there versus the owner's operating from a distance and has no idea what goes on unless a neighbor calls because they know them, or B, and which is probably more likely, is that the municipality and bylaw enforcement is going to be calling saying, oh, we've got a problem. So that was the only reason that it kind of stood out, but I appreciate the fact that there's some market forces there as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you. Through you.
You can say. Yeah, we're king of the table.
Good. So just a question, and may or may not be relevant. Any monies that we collect from this licensing, where would they come to, or what would we do with those funds?
Well, let's see if Mr. McDonald wants to take the first crack as the department that does the licensing, and then we have Director Hines here that can talk about what we do with it after we receive it, perhaps.
Through the chair to Councillor McCaw, tell you the honest truth, we collect the licensing fees, and to tell you the truth, they go into an account, and I would turn it over to the Director of Finance to tell you where they go from there.
Director Hines.
They become part of general revenue, so they essentially offset what ultimately needs to be collected through property taxes or the meter.
Thank you for that. Just to follow, if we did go down that road, I mean, I would almost be of the mind to suggest it would be nice to have it in the reserve fund and use it for something to do with increasing housing units, or, I think before we talked about incentivizing people putting secondary suites in their homes. That might be something I would wonder if we could do something like that with those funds in an effort to help us build the more residential units.
Well, what I would say, Councillor McCaw, is that I don't, what's the figure? We have 150 potentially in the city. So at $500 a piece for the initial registration, and then $150 a year on an annual basis, it would be a sum of money, but certainly it wouldn't offset the costs of us to administer the licensing program to begin with. But right now we have nothing, and so we're trying to find something to go. But I think that certainly in the future, these types of properties would be paying an annual fee. That fee can be reviewed by council at each time. They also will be generating municipal accommodation tax, and I think that that 4% amount for them would be a larger amount of monies, and I think certainly that might not be a bad idea. Right now, we have terms of reference for the municipal accommodation tax and how we spend it, but we could always make an amendment to try to take some of those funds to offset the permanent housing that would be lost in our market. You know, residents who would live there and live in our community, that if they didn't have that housing, we could help create more housing to replace it. I think that's a very good idea, but yeah. Do you have anything else, or that's it? Okay. Anyone else on this issue? Okay, so Mr. McDonald, you know, I heard you say that you bring us back some options, and I think just taking the temperature in the room, we would like a recommendation from you. We can amend it if we don't like your recommendation, but giving us options is going to, you know, sort of drag this out even further. My sense is from my colleagues, and unless I get any objection, is that we want a regulation that requires these types of businesses to be licensed. And then as we get more information about what the true extent is in the city, we would like to see that bylaw evolve to incorporate additional things, such as what Councillor Alsap brought up, such as what Councillor McCaw brought up, and everybody else. So I think we're good with what you've proposed as the best practices to include, you know, subject to what Councillor Carr spoke about in terms of the principal residence. I don't think, I I understand your point. We'll have a challenge if that's what the first bylaw says, that you can only have you know, a short-term accommodation facility if you're there, because we have a number that are just income properties and the resident or the owner is not resident. But let's start with that. And are we good with the 500 and the 150 recommendation that's in there? So, and I think that's probably the biggest issue to start off is with the amount for that license, and then we'll move on. And then we will have to consider implementation of this a little more when we deal with operating budget, because we already know that our bylaw enforcement staff, particularly with COVID regulations, have had additional responsibilities, and we need to understand how that department works. I'm not sensing any objections, Councillor Carr?
No objection, but in terms of the application fee, because you know, it was quite clear in the clerk's report, and we've seen it many times, staff get concerned when council starts throwing new initiatives out and then the resources to go with it. Here's a prime example of where the application fees should be paying for it, so that if we do actually have to add resources, staff resources, this program should be funding it. We shouldn't just simply go to general revenue and try to fund it that way. So if these application fees match up with the resources that may be required based on what we think might be out there, then that's great. And if they're not, then I would suggest that we craft them in such a way that
So why don't we suggest we double them? So $1,000 for the initial application, $300 a year for renewal, and then what we'll request is that at the operating budget in April, when we are dealing with the operating budget, that Director Hines can give us an analysis of what the expense has been from a staff point of view and what the revenues are, and then we can look at it again. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's good.
Everybody good with that? Okay, so just one amendment, sir. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. And so we're going to look forward to, do we think we'll have a bylaw at the December 6th or December 13th meeting?
Through the chair, I would think it'll more likely be early in the new year.
So the January meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Councillor.
Sorry, Your Worship.
Millett?
Yeah, just further to what we've I just got an alert. We got an email literally sent to us 4:51 p.m. from Airbnb, the organization. So in all of our emails, and they're trying to give us guidance here, but I do note that one of the things that this representative from Airbnb, who is speaking according to his email on behalf of Belleville's small Airbnb host community, they do encourage registration as a means for compliance. So there's some things that even that community is willing to work with us on. So at least we're headed down the right path.
And we can forward that to Director McDonald, and he can consider that as he drafts the bylaw, and we'll hope to have it in January. We'll be fair because we know this is not an uncomplicated matter. It is complicated, and we'll look there. Excellent, thank you. 8A3, Construction Consulting Services for Herkimer Avenue Reconstruction. It is the Project Manager of Construction, report number ENG 2021-27. And the resolution is that in accordance with Section 30.3, sole and single sourcing, approval and reporting of the city's purchasing bylaw number 2020-09, the proposal from WSP Canada, Inc. be accepted for the supply of contract administration and construction inspection services for the railway crossing components of the Herkimer Avenue Reconstruction Project in the amount of $50,049.25 plus HST for a total dollar amount of $56,555.65, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Councillor Alsap's moving it. Councillor Feeney's seconding it. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. 8A4, Development Charges Background Study. Director, Engineering and Development Services, Manager of Finance, Deputy Treasurers, report number DE and DS 2021-07. And the resolution is that report number DE and DS 2021-07, dated November 8, 2021, regarding the 2021 Development Charges Background Study be received as information, and that staff report back once input from the public has been received, assessed, and addressed. Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Thompson. And then, just from my understanding, this report will be prepared and available for the December 6th meeting when Council considers the development charge bylaw.
That is the goal, yes.
Great. Okay. I'll call any questions or comments. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. We'll move on to consent items, where Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and Council shall consider such items individually. We'll go around the table. Councillor McCaw.
No, thank you.
Councillor
Other than
Sanderson.
to suggest AB2?
You've got a conflict on it, yeah. And if it doesn't get polled, then you won't have a conflict. And if it does, then we'll ask you to leave at that point. Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop. 8B9.
I was going to say that.
Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr.
8B4.
Great. Councillor Feeney. Okay. Councillor Millett.
No, thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
All right. So the resolution is that the following agenda items be approved with the exception of 8B4 and 8B9. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Alsap, all in favor. It's carried. And it's noted that Councillor McCaw declared a conflict on 8B2, but it didn't come up. 8B4, recommendation report to adopt a new official plan for the City of Belleville. It is the Manager of Policy Planners report number PP 2021-64. The resolution is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council, that pursuant to report PP 2021-64, City of Belleville new official plan, a bylaw be prepared for Council's consideration to approve and adopt the City of Belleville's new official plan, and that the City of Belleville's new official plan be submitted to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for final approval. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Councillor Carr, you raised the issue. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. And just wanted to, as Chair of the Planning Committee, say thank you to Planning Committee members, both elected and non-elected, and in particular Director Ashton and his staff. This is a significant endeavor, but a very important foundation in terms of as our city develops and grows, and as we look at the zoning bylaw next, and as we look at even the development charges bylaw, those all flow out of the fact of how we're growing and developing our city. So it's not lost on me. I've been through this process before 20 years ago, and to see it come here again with a full review and a new plan is fantastic, and I just want to recognize the work that goes into such an endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this matter? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8B9, Belleville Nighttime Santa Claus Parade. Request for assistance and permit application. It is a request for assistance with the 23rd Annual Belleville Nighttime Santa Claus Parade from the Belleville Chamber of Commerce and Parade Permit Application. The resolution is that the Belleville Chamber of Commerce application for the issuance of a parade permit to have a parade on November 21st, 2021, leaving from the racetrack at the Belleville Fairgrounds at 4:30 p.m. be approved in consultation with staff, and that the assistance required and special considerations requested, including waiver of fees and enforcement of no parking on parade day bylaw as outlined by the Belleville Chamber of Commerce, and the request for assistance with the 23rd Annual Belleville Nighttime Santa Claus Parade on November 21st, 2021 be approved and referred to staff for consultation and I guess implementation, because we won't be meeting again, so they'll do it. Councillor Alsap is moving it. Councillor Feeney is seconding it. Councillor Alsap, you raised this. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight how excited I am to see this come across our desk tonight. Obviously, it's been a long couple of years with COVID, and last year I think we did a great job at having a solution that allowed for the parade to continue. I think having the parade back in its traditional form will be even better. I can tell you that myself and my wife are very excited about it. Our kids are very excited about it. So I think we might have found out today that the kids might be on the float. So very much looking forward to that. And I just wanted to say quickly on this note, unless I've terribly misjudged the room, to all the Grinches in the comment sections on the stories about how we were going to discuss this tonight, saying that we were going to ruin Christmas and pull the parade and all that sort of thing, I look forward to your retractions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, don't hold your breath, because you won't be breathing. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Feeney.
I would like to join Councillor Alsop in my excitement about the parade and the fact that we are going to invite Santa to come back and visit Belleville on the 21st of November. What a great day.
Yeah. Good. Anyone else? I'm going to ask Ms. Raycroft just to come forward. She is the CEO of the Belleville Chamber of Commerce, because I want to do a couple things. First of all, I want to give her an opportunity to say something, but I also want to, on behalf of the entire city of Belleville, thank you so very much. We know how difficult this has been in terms of changing regulations and changing directions. And, you know, when you came before us before, you had talked about a drive-by parade because we weren't sure. The regulations have changed. You've had to make plans. You've had to completely throw those plans in the garbage, make new ones. I know how, you know, proud of your community that you and your staff are, and you wanted to do a good job. And so I know how much work has gone into this. And so first of all, I just want to say thank you. You have made so many people in our community happy, children, to be able to bring back the joy of Christmas time, you know, during a very difficult time for our community. This is going to be a huge impact from a mental health and from a morale and from a community point of view. So first of all, thank you on that. I think we've covered everything, and staff will work with you. If there's something that hasn't been outlined in this or the previous presentation, we're all there. Do you have anything you want to sort of talk about, any suggestions to residents who want to come and enjoy the parade that day, parade participants, that they should be aware of any changes, any protocol issues that we want to implement?
Sure. I mean, I can, through you and to all members of council, thank you so much for supporting this so enthusiastically. You know, to your point, there were social media people who just kind of said, well, if they don't do it, it's because they're lazy. And I think that was the one I found the most enjoyable, because we are here today with this proposal because Susan has been working for weeks trying to get it ready to go. And you know, and I know Quinte West was actively trying to do the same thing, so I'm not quite sure what happened in their world, but it does take a long time, and when we're waiting for that final moment where the health unit says, okay, you can go ahead on this basis, we really were. We had our fingers crossed. My legs still are, so I'm just thankful, really, that we were able to go ahead with it. I mean, the biggest thing the health unit said is just remind people that when you can't physically distance, face coverings are required. Let's hope everyone's wearing scarves. That might help. I'm hoping it won't be like it was last year with the weather, which really suited people who were driving, maybe not so much the people who were standing, and hoping that we'll have good weather, maybe better than hometown hockey. I may have run out of luck on weather, but we're working on that too. But for sure, the people who have committed to joining us for this parade are really excited to be back. It's a ton of work for a lot of organizations, and the health unit kind of coming through the last minute here has really made it possible. So we were kind of, you know, that amber light for so long. We just kept our hopes up and kept our fingers crossed, and Susan has continued to do the work. And through the help of the city, they have been great to make it happen. And the fact that we did the Bridge Street route 2 years ago, and it was such a success, lots of room for people to distance, lots of spaces for people to just walk along. We're so excited. Anyway, thank you so much, and thank you for your support. I mean, it certainly has meant a great deal to us to be able to pivot, and I think it's gone to pirouetting at this point, but yes, for sure we have. And we're looking so forward to 2022 being an amazing year. Yeah. So thank you all for your support.
Good. Well, thank you. You know, again, we've all lost so much, and last year was a difficult year, and you know, to be able to offer our residents and our children who really, you know, are faultless in this whole situation, the ability to have a little bit of normalcy and to return to Christmas. I don't want to say it doesn't matter what the weather is, because I know it affects the participants and the organizers, but really it doesn't matter what the weather is. People will be out and they will celebrate the meaning of Christmas this year, and we invite everybody to join us along that very, very long route. Information will be coming out in media, social media, and again, a very big thank you from all of us. So,
I'll pass it on to Susan too, because she's the one who deserves the thanks.
Yeah. The resolution is before us. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Council information matters. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I'll work around the table. Councillor Kelly, Councillor Millette, Councillor Feeney.
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr.
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
No, thank you.
Councillor McCaw.
No thanks.
So then all the agenda items be received. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. Motion to rise and report. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All in favor? It's carried. We'll deal with bylaws, and if it's okay, I will just read the bylaw numbers. So we have two items. I'm going to pull two items and deal with them first. These are the items that Councillor McCaw has declared a conflict on, and they are bylaws number 2021-177 and 178. Can I have a mover, please? First reading. Councillor Kelly and Councillor Millette. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2021-177 and 178. Moved by Councillor Thompson and Councillor Alsop. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. And third and final reading of bylaws number 2021-177 and 178. Moved by Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Kelly. All in favor? It's carried. Councillor McCaw can come back in if she wishes. Join the fun. All right, so first reading of bylaws number 2021-176, 179, 180, 181, 182, and 183. Moved by Councillor Kelly and Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws 2021-176, 179, 180, 181, 182, and 183. Moved by Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Feeney. Any questions or discussion on any of those bylaws? All in favor? Carried. And third and final reading of bylaws number 2021-160, 176, 179, 180, 181, 182, and 183. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor? It's carried. Did I get all those? Okay. All right, new business. So I'd like to again take a moment to thank our residents and business owners for adhering to the regulations in place during the Government of Ontario's reopening plan. I know the restrictions continue to impact our daily lives, and I appreciate everyone's cooperation as we, as a country, as a province, and as a community, work to find a balance between carrying on with life while also keeping our residents safe. City Hall continues to be open to the public from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. However, online, phone, and Dropbox services continue to be offered as an alternative to coming into City Hall. The public is encouraged to continue utilizing those options whenever possible. As of September 22nd, the city introduced an identification and proof of COVID-19 vaccination policy for entrance to municipal buildings. Individuals 12 years of age and older wishing to enter city buildings will be required to provide personal information and a proof of COVID-19 vaccination each time they seek entry to a city building. Those wishing to meet with engineering, planning, and building officials on the second floor are still advised to book an appointment. Anyone looking for marriage license and Commissioner of Oath services are encouraged to call the City Clerk's office to confirm you have all the required documentation before they bring you in for an appointment. The Belleville Public Library continues to be open to the public. Traditional library services continue to be exempt from the vaccine passport system and other essentially designated services such as public transit. The Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre continues to move forward with their staggered road to reopening plan. Please note that pre-registration is required in most cases and that all persons entering the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre are required to show proof of vaccination with some exceptions. We encourage the public to check the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre website for all of the most up-to-date details. The provincial vaccine booking system remains open and the vaccination centre located at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre continues to operate under the management of Public Health and our Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre team. I have some news to break today that Council had previously authorized relocation of the vaccination clinic from the gymnasium to the Family Dental Center arena. Further consultation with the health unit has advised us they do not need to make that move, so we will continue to operate our ice pads in that area. I know that the furor from the hockey community will be shifted now, so that we're all going to hear from those people passionate about pickleball and the fact that we have no indoor basketball anymore and everything else. But we're in one of these positions where no matter what we do, we can't make everybody happy. But they are able to use the gymnasium moving forward, and we want to thank all of our staff for working so hard with them. As the Council, we remain collectively and singularly focused on the safety and health of all of our residents and all of our decisions. We thank everyone for your cooperation and support of our efforts and encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as you are able to. A reminder to all motorists that the city's winter parking restrictions came into effect on November the 1st. In accordance with the city's parking bylaw, overnight parking between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. on all city streets is prohibited from November the 1st until April the 15th. And please note that City Hall is closed this Thursday, November the 11th, to honor Remembrance Day. The Veterans Council has again organized an in-person service at the Belleville Cenotaph to commemorate those who have served our nation. The ceremony will start at approximately 10:30 a.m. at the Cenotaph on Station Street, and the public is invited to attend. While the traditional service has been adjusted for COVID protocols, it is going ahead, and as I just mentioned, the public is invited to attend. Now, we've all heard the disturbing, disturbing acts of vandalism which occurred last week at the St. James and Elmwood cemeteries here in Belleville and in the region. Council has been greatly concerned about this despicable behavior and the impact on our community. City staff have been working with Campbell's Monuments, and they have come up with a cleaning effort plan. I have spoken with some of you last week, colleagues, and over the weekend, and we've consulted with our city staff. We do have some funds available in our grant committee budget to help with the costs of the cleanup. And I'd like to ask Councillor Sanderson, who first brought this forward, to make a motion that $15,000 from the grant committee budget for the 2021 budget year be donated towards the cost of cleanup in the Belleville cemeteries affected. Councillor Sanderson, would you be willing to make that motion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good. I'm looking for a seconder, Councillor Alsop. Councillor Sanderson, did you want to speak to it?
No, just other than to, there's been a lot of negative press, and I think it's great that the city has reached out to the two cemeteries here. We don't own either, but I think it's something that hopefully will never happen again. But I'm glad to see that we're in a position to be able to help. I know that they had started a GoFundMe page, and I don't know how that was progressing to try and raise I think it's $15,000. So for us to be in a position to be able to help, I think is fabulous, and thank everybody for their efforts in that regard.
Good. Just before I open it up for other comments, General Manager Reid, did I understand correctly from your comments that Campbell's is expecting that the Elmwood Cemetery will be completely cleaned and restored in time for their late afternoon, evening Remembrance Day ceremony on Wednesday?
In my discussions with Trevor at Campbell Monuments, he said that they should be cleaned up tomorrow as long as they have the chemicals to come in. They were getting low on that, but hopefully it'll be done and they'll be moving to St. James. And then, of course, we want to do it as soon as possible, but there is the annual Remembrance ceremony at the Elmwood Cemetery on Wednesday at 4:30. So that's great news that we will have that facility done in a terrible situation that's there. Anyone else have any questions or comments they'd like to make on this matter? So I'll call the question. All in favor? And it carries. New business. Councillor Thompson.
Just a couple of questions, maybe more to staff than... I've had some people inquiring, and I don't know the time schedule, for the completion of the footbridge and on the Herkimer and Dundas intersection. Can somebody just, I've had a number of people asking, what's the time frame of getting Dundas and Herkimer back into a reasonable for the winter time? So just sort of a timeline, if I can get that from the two.
Director Ashton, can you clarify anything or shed some light for us?
So Herkimer and Dundas, I was just talking to our construction manager, and they're expecting December for completion. The footbridge, they ran into some issues, so they'll be finishing it up next year.
Which was always the plan, though, to finish in the summer of 2022.
Yeah, the plan was always for was it always for 2022, or was it? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else for new business? Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick one, and I know that we discussed this, I believe it was last year. Daylight savings time. Oh, sorry. Daylight savings time, who needs it? I'd be much happier if we were done with this. And I know that it was brought, the province said they were going to do it. They talked to the feds. They felt that maybe, if America didn't do it and we did it, it would be strange. But I would ask that staff write a letter saying that we still would like to see daylight savings time abolished and get on with our lives and not have to reset our clocks and everything every year. And it's just nonsense. Thank you.
I'm smiling, Councillor Alsop, because I'm wondering which ministry at the provincial government would deal with what time zone or where we would be. We can probably have some fun suggesting which one should, but okay, we'll look into it and we'll see. I do believe that we'll have to bring it back for a resolution, because if we're going to did we support a resolution before? Do you remember?
I believe that was the case, yes.
Okay, so if we supported a resolution, then we already would have submitted that information on. And if we didn't, it may take a while for Mr. McDonald to get through his previous records. If we didn't, then we may have to bring it back as a resolution. You're going to open up, this is kind of like the cat licensing bylaw potential. There's lots of discussion on it, so good. Okay, thank you. New business, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Do I have to stand for this one through you, Mayor?
Pardon me?
I have to stand for this one? Yes.
We're back in.
Okay, thank you. I'm hoping that just to follow up on Councillor Alsop, that we can actually have a report done by staff, the benefits of not suggesting what Councillor Alsop is suggesting.
An opposite?
Exactly. We know that farmers work early in the morning, daylight, they want that as early as possible. That's why we do that. And when I was a trustee with the school board, there was research done that if we didn't flip our clocks back in the fall, it would get bright in communities around 9:30. That's the research. And it's only for, like, I think, 75 days. And school boards and parents do not want their children on rural roads or streets without streetlights and where it's dark. So there's a science and there's some, serious work has gone into this. So I'm hoping that the city staff can do a report, Mr. McDonald, by 9 o'clock tomorrow, of the benefits of flipping the clocks back 1 hour. Thank you.
Well, I think what would happen, Councillor Kelly, is that if, in fact, we did not have this, that Mr. McDonald will speak with Councillor Alsap, and if Councillor Alsap wants to bring something forward, you would have the ability to speak against it and vote it down, and we would be able to have a big community discussion about doing this. Now, having that discussion, some people might suggest that it's completely inappropriate for us to be dealing with it and that we have other matters to deal with and shouldn't we be doing it, and no matter how you bring it forward, they'll say it was brought forward in the wrong way, but it's always fun. So, good. Anyone else for new business? So we'll move on to motions. And now, at the last meeting, Councillor McCaw provided a notice of motion, and at that time I suggested that I would review it. It is in the package because I wasn't sure about the outcome of the item under the 8A section. I would suggest that it's probably out of order now, but I'm going to allow Councillor McCaw to make a decision if she would like to withdraw it at this point or proceed with it.
Thank you, through you. And I think at this point I'm going to withdraw the motion, but I'm going to bring it back under a notice of motion with an alteration. So
next. In the next section?
In the
or
next
today?
section,
Okay.
yeah.
So the motion is withdrawn, and now under notice of motions, Councillor McCaw, go ahead.
Thank you. And I've just changed it just ever so slightly. So the notice of motion is to give direction to staff to investigate all legal options available, if there are any, up to and including the ability to develop a need to reside bylaw or purchase levy on any property purchased by non-residents in an effort to curb the mass real estate speculation in our community.
Okay, and you have that in writing. Give that to Mr. McDonald. And I wonder, Mr. McDonald, if I can just borrow you for one quick moment. So, Councillor McCaw, I was just asking, and I said that based on your notice of motion, why don't we just ask for Mr. McDonald to provide a report on that? Because the process you're using is that we would have this come back to the next council meeting, we would debate it, and we'd be debating something that we didn't know if they could or could not do, and then we would have a vote on it, and if we approved it, then Mr. McDonald would have to come back and report on the bylaw anyway. So with the consent of council, I'll just consider this as a new business request, and Mr. McDonald will consider the wording that you have in your proposed motion and bring it back when he can with some information. I suspect that there's some legal issues here as whether or not we're able to require that people purchasing property in the city actually be residents. It makes it very difficult for people to move here and buy a house and move here in that case, but I think let's let them sort of consider it and come back. Does that sound fair?
Through you, yes. And I mean, obviously, there's going to be considerations for people that actually are coming here to work and, certain things like that. But there was Banff implemented something like this. So this is, might give Director McDonald some place to look.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody, for helping with that. So notice of motions is, there are none today, so we'll move to announcements. Sorry, Councillor Carr?
I had a notice of motion.
Oh, a notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So notice of motion, whereas Transit Route 9 in Ward 2 will require a permanent funding source in the latter half of 2022 and beyond, it's requested that staff prepare a resident survey for council's consideration and approval regarding taxpayers' willingness to fund this route partially through property taxes as part of service expansion, after which the survey results be included in the 2022 draft operating budget agenda. And I've submitted
You've got it in writing and submitted. Thank you. Any other notices of motion? Okay, so then we'll now move to announcements. Anyone have any announcements today? Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I have two. So I was contacted by members of the Canadian Special Operations Command who had been conducting training in the Quinte region over the past few weeks, of which the city put out an announcement. And October 30th, I participated in a transition meeting, as it was called, as an elected official of a fictitious country as part of Exercise Intrepid Forge. And I'd like to thank them for the opportunity not only to witness but to participate in their training. I'm proud of our Canadian Armed Forces and the work they do to secure peace and stability both home and abroad. The second thing I wanted to announce was I'll be hosting two town hall meetings. The first one is Tuesday, November 30th at 6:30 p.m. and it will be at the Thurlow Community Centre, following local and provincial health guidelines, including proof of vaccination. And then Thursday, December 1st at 6:30, I'll host a virtual town hall. Register by sending an email to myself at councillor.carr@belleville.ca. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for announcements? All right, I would like to begin by proclaiming November 5th to November 11th as National Veterans Week in the city of Belleville, to honor the valor, duty, and tremendous sacrifices of those who fought for our freedoms. I encourage everyone to wear a poppy to demonstrate our respect for veterans, for our veterans. The money raised from the poppy drive goes 100% to fund veteran services. This year, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the poppy as a mark of remembrance. I would also like to proclaim November the 16th as Louis Riel Day in the city of Belleville. November 16th, 1885 marks the day when Louis Riel was executed for leading the Northwest Rebellion in defense of the Métis people. We will be flying the Louis Riel flag at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre on November the 16th. I proclaim the 16 days from November 25th to December the 10th as Orange Days. Unite to end violence against women and girls in the city of Belleville. The lower bridge and the Belleville sign will be lit up in orange to honor this important time. Thank you to our local Quinte Grand members for spearheading this message. And lastly, I proclaim November 25th as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women on behalf of the Three Oaks Foundation. This year's theme is Wrapped in Courage, and we will be raising the Wrapped in Courage flag on November the 25th at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre to show our support. On October the 28th, I was thrilled to host Belleville's second ever Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. My hope is that this will become an annual celebration of the countless contributions made by our communities of faith, and I thank everyone who was able to attend this year. On October the 28th, I was also pleased to join dignitaries from around the region at the official ribbon-cutting ceremony of the new Quinte West OPP building located on Dixon Drive in Quinte West. Congratulations to Mayor Jim Harrison and the Quinte West Council for the opening of this great facility in our region. Congratulations to Quinte Broadcasting and Starboard Communications. Last week, both of these media companies were winners of the Ontario Association of Broadcasters Community Service Award for their joint efforts and the Kids Can't Wait Radiothon for the Children's Foundation. $70,000 was raised at that event, and it was great to see this recognition from the Ontario Association of Broadcasters. On October the 29th, I joined city staff and Thurlow Ward councillors at the retirement celebration for Frank Golden. Frank retired as general operator with the Transportation and Operations Department after 30 years of service. Frank was the final employee of the original Thurlow Township operations crew. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, October the 29th marked a special day for us here in the city of Belleville as we officially opened the Pat Culhane Dog Park in Ward 2. This park is a beautiful addition to the area and is already being enjoyed by residents and their pets. It was great to see all members of council in attendance and the large group of family and friends that helped us celebrate that dedication. The City of Belleville was excited to host hometown hockey from October the 30th to November the 1st for the second time. I joined the festivities for the official kickoff on Saturday, October the 30th. I attended the thank you presentation on October 31st and the live outdoor viewing party with Ron McLean and Tara Sloan on November the 1st. A big thank you to Jill Raycroft and her team at the Belleville Chamber of Commerce for their work in organizing this fantastic event on very short notice. On Tuesday, November the 2nd, I attended the funeral service of Reverend Alan Kay, who was an active member of the Aldersgate Village Board and the Belleville Centennial Free Methodist Church on Avondale Road. His son, Reverend Kevin Kay, led a very moving funeral service. My condolences to the family and to those who will miss him. On November the 4th, I attended the grand opening for Focus Co-working. Focus is a new co-working space for individuals and teams located in the heart of downtown at 233 Front Street. I thank Councillors Thompson and Feeney for joining me that day, and congratulations and welcome to our downtown. This past Saturday, I was honored to be invited to the Canada Remembers the Korean War service at Army Navy Air Force Unit 377 in Kingston, organized by the Korean Canadian Community Centre of Greater Eastern Ontario. It was a lovely event to honor the Canadian veterans who fought for the liberty of South Korea in the Korean War of 1950 to 1953. I was very pleased to join MPP Todd Smith and Consul General Kim Duk Hwan of the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea as speakers. It was a very moving ceremony to recognize not just the Korean War, but also the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Kapyong. This battle is one of the most significant in the history of the Canadian Forces and brought great honor to the 2nd Division of the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry. 26,000 Canadians served in the Korean War, and 516 made the ultimate sacrifice, including Private George T. Barlow of Belleville. Thank you to Margaret Sue of Belleville, who is the president of the Korean Canadian Community Centre of Greater Eastern Ontario, for inviting me and for organizing this event that allowed us to remember the sacrifice of Canadians and to get to know Korean culture better. Please remember that the Lighting Display and Gateway Signage Committee is hosting the Festival of Lights, which is sure to be a beautiful display again this year. The festival officially kicks off on November the 19th at 5:30 p.m. here in Market Square, and we invite the community to join us at the beginning of this wonderful time of the year. And lastly, I want to remind everybody that Santa will be in attendance for the return of the on-street Santa Claus Parade on Sunday, November 21st. We want to thank the Belleville Chamber of Commerce again for their hard work in organizing this year with all the changing circumstances and for all the float participants who will be taking part this year. It is one more step along the road to returning to the things that we have missed so much in the past 18 months. Mayor and Council look forward to seeing everyone as we return with our great float operated by the city's operations staff, and we hope that everyone in the community are able to join us. With that, I will now ask that for a confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2021-184, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council at its meeting held on November the 8th, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 8th day of November 2021. Moved by Councillor Alsap, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? It's carried. Motion to adjourn, Councillor McCaw and Councillor Feeney. All in